Chapter 1845, Levik's War to Destroy the Country, 5. In just 10 minutes, Levik's planet was bombed again. This time, due to the planet's rotation, the attack point was in a different location. However, the immense power of the attack caused significant damage once more. The defense fleet in space sent a message confirming that laser weapons were bombing Levik's planet. They also provided numerous videos and pictures. Through this image data, General Lepik discovered that the attack consisted of 3 beams of light arranged in a Z-shaped pattern. As the dazzling light beams extinguished, a small red light and an entwining spiral of light could gradually be seen. Energy weapons? We still haven't detected the other party's signal. Does this mean that the enemy is 550 million kilometers away and is attacking us with energy weapons? General Lepik looked incredulous. Where can we get energy weapons that can shoot accurately over hundreds of millions of kilometers? This is the only explanation. It is certain that we are under attack, said a staff officer. Judging from the position where the opponent's hyperspace fluctuation disappears, the attack is indeed at the speed of light. A super long-distance attack at the speed of light. General Lepik's face, already red, seemed about to burst. If this is the case, the enemy's technology is at least 2 levels higher than ours. He turned abruptly to the Golden Bishop and asked, "Is this the power of the God of Decay?" However, the Golden Bishop seemed very relaxed. He laughed and said, "Ha, don't worry, this is not the God of Decay. The attacks of the God of Decay are not like this, and they do not use such advanced technology. Ha, God bless us, the God of Decay has not come. You bastard." Lepik swallowed the curse that came to his lips and growled, "Is this a good thing? Do you know what super long-distance attacks at the speed of light mean? It means that we can only watch helplessly as they destroy our planet bit by bit, and we have no power to fight back." Before he finished speaking, another dull thunder echoed from the sky. This time, the thunder seemed closer. Another communication reported that beams of light had bombarded a town 50 kilometers away, turning it into a city of lava due to the terrifying temperature. None of the more than 20,000 residents survived. Even the Golden Bishop, who had just been relieved that it was not the God of Decay, fell silent. The only good news is that judging from the impact points of the opponent's 3 attacks, they did not move. They are mechanically attacking Levik's planet, with the impact points moving with the planet's rotation. But the bad news is that their accuracy can at least target the planet's revolution, said General Lepik. What should we do? Are we just going to watch them keep bombing us? The great Siratut roared loudly. I have already dispatched a reconnaissance plane. Later, we can use hyperspace communication to understand the opponent's situation, said an officer in the defense fleet. The first elder on the side shouted, "What's the use of sending a reconnaissance plane? How long will it take to fly there? Once the other side discovers and destroys our reconnaissance plane, will we have to send another one over?" His question hit the nail on the head, leaving General Lepik silent. After a few seconds, he slowly said, "Our fastest reconnaissance aircraft, using a sublight speed engine to fly 550 million kilometers, will take 3 days. Do we have to be passively beaten for these 4 days, enduring bombings every 10 minutes? The great Siratut asked. General Lepik roared in frustration, looking up at the sky. "Fuck your reconnaissance plane. All fleets assemble immediately. When the scan results come back, rush over to me." "That's right. Kill them." Another half-hour later, Levik's planet was still being bombarded every 10 minutes. At this time, the scanning signal also returned to the command center. "General, we received the scanning signal." And off. Iser walked quickly and projected the data from his personal terminal onto the huge screen. Only a long battleship appeared in front of everyone. The enemy only has this one battleship? The size of this battleship could not be clearly seen on the projection map, so this result made the great Siratut feel ashamed. The majestic Silu Empire was being bullied by a mere warship? This battleship is very huge. According to the scan data, its length is more than 5,600 meters. The volume is 20 times that of our largest battlecruiser, the officer explained. And we have also confirmed that this battleship is using the 3 main doors on the bow to bombard the planet Levik with artillery. Your Majesty, we have received communications from the enemy. Another officer ran over. The figure of a middle-aged human general in military uniform was projected on the holographic screen in front of them. It was Lieutenant General He Ru. He spoke with great authority. This is the exploration fleet of the Principality of Dawn, and I am the fleet commander. Now, we are filing the most severe charges against you, the Xilu Empire, for the crimes of anti-society, anti-civilization, and anti-intelligent creatures. I ask you to immediately give up biobattery technology, destroy all biobattery manufacturing plants, and release all those imprisoned as batteries. Then accept trial. I will give you 2 days to think about it. General Lepeux didn't want to hear these words at all. He showed a ferocious smile and walked out of the command center. Soon, a shuttle took off and flew him towards the fleet. Indeed, these conditions were impossible for the Xilu Empire to accept. What is the Principality of Dawn? What qualifications do you have to judge the technology used by our Xilu Empire? The Great Siratut asked gloomily. Because your biobattery technology seriously threatens the safety of surrounding civilizations. And among them, a large number of humans are used as batteries, which is not allowed, Lieutenant General He Ru said coldly. Have you ever thought about it? Without biobattery as an energy source, how many of us Xilu people will suffer from hunger and finally die miserably from cold and starvation? Thinking of the other party's powerful technology, the Great Siratut remained patient and did not lose his temper on the spot. At this time, the huge fleet of the Xilu Empire had already set off. General Lepeux left less than a quarter of the battleships behind for defense and led the main fleet to attack Planet 5. The enemy only had 1 battleship, so in that case, it would be much easier to deal with it. He Ru looked at the Great Siratut and said coldly, Suffering from hunger? Then I would say, this is a punishment for you. You capture people from the surrounding races and stuff them into batteries, drain them dry, and let them die. This is retribution. Chapter 846, Levik's War to Destroy the Country. 6. Lieutenant General He Ru faced the Great Siratut's sneering response with a calm demeanor. Siratut, not fully grasping the concept of retribution, nonetheless understood it was not a favorable term. He sneered and declared, So, you think you can challenge our Xilu Empire with just 1 battleship? Very well. This will be your burial ground. Here, I will avenge the destruction of our 3 fleets. With a furious roar, Siratut terminated the communication. There was no need for further dialogue. The positions of both parties made peace talks impossible. Both sides were confident in their ability to defeat the other. Lieutenant General He Ru turned to his adjutant and asked, Did he say 3 fleets? The adjutant, appearing indifferent, shrugged and replied, The first 3 cruisers were likely a patrol fleet. During our interrogation, we learned that the Xilu Empire's fleet formation is not fixed. It often organizes around a Siri-class battlecruiser as the flagship. Therefore, the 2 Siri-class battlecruisers we destroyed later likely represented 2 separate fleets. He Ru nodded, not overly concerned. Then proceed with the established plan. Continue the attack, bombard Levik planet. The Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier continued its assault, using the 3 powerful particle light spears on its bow to bombard Levik planet. Each shot was fired every 10 minutes, with a pause for cooling after 5 consecutive launches. This was clearly an act of orbital bombardment. However, as an energy weapon, the particle light spear's main damage came from high temperature and penetration. Its effectiveness for orbital bombardment was limited, especially as the light spear's power was significantly weakened when passing through the atmosphere. Despite this, the bombardment still caused significant casualties on Levik planet, which had a population of over 10 billion. The entire exploration fleet had reached a consensus. There was no room for morality when dealing with the Xilu people, who used living beings as batteries. They needed to be destroyed swiftly. After a day of continuous orbital bombardment, the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier halted its assault to begin the cooling cycle, maintenance, and recharge of the particle lance system, a process that would take about a day and a half. Meanwhile, the Normandy, in stealth mode, had positioned itself about 1 million kilometers away from Levik planet. The crew knew that while the Xilu Empire's drones and warships powered by biological batteries, could detect stealth, their range was limited. At 1 million kilometers, the Normandy was safe. For a detector, this distance meant a response time of about 6 seconds. The Normandy began using hyperspace encrypted communication to report the situation around Levick planet to the Eternal. Upon receiving this information, the Eternal adjusted its shooting angle accordingly. "Your Majesty, we have intercepted the enemy's hyperspace communication," an officer reported urgently. "What is it?" the great Siratut asked, his tone dark. "We don't know yet. It hasn't been decrypted. The enemy is using a completely unknown language, making decryption nearly impossible based on this communication alone," the officer explained. "However, we can confirm that the communication originated from within 2 million kilometers of the planet." "What did you say? They have already infiltrated a spaceship?" Siratut exclaimed, jumping up in alarm. "It appears so, if they have a spacecraft within that range. Near our planet, through hyperspace communication, they will be able to carry out precise strikes around us," the officer said. "What? Quick! Quick! Send out all the warships and find them!" The great Siratut panicked and shouted. About a quarter of the warships left behind by the Xiaolu Empire immediately spread out and pounced towards the general area where the communications had been intercepted. However, in the vast universe, finding an invisible spacecraft without effective long-distance anti-invisibility means is probably more difficult than finding a needle in a haystack. The Normandy had long since changed its position. Immediately afterwards, 3 particle light spears arranged in a zigzag pattern arrived as promised, accurately hitting a spaceport on the outskirts of Levick's planet. There was no suspense, no possibility of resistance. The spaceport was blown into countless pieces. The fighter jets and spaceships parked in the spaceport were instantly destroyed, and the metal debris mixed with countless twisted corpses flew everywhere with the kinetic energy of the explosion. The great Siratut had no choice. He could only connect to General Lepick's communication and yelled, "I don't care what method you use. You must knock down the opponent's big ship. Destroy it. Tear it apart." General Lepick's eyes also turned red. He had learned about the tragic situation on Levick's planet over the past few days through hyperspace communication. After being bombarded for more than a day without any precautions, more than 100 huge lava craters had been created on the surface of the planet. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed or injured. This was because the other party was bombing indiscriminately without any purpose, and many of the attacks were on uninhabited mountains and oceans. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. We are only less than 1 light minute away from each other," Lepick said with a grim expression. He led 30 Siri-class battlecruisers and 100 other cruisers. After 3 days of sublight speed flight, they had already approached the opponent's giant ship, which was more than 5,600 meters long. According to their detectors, every detail of this giant ship could be clearly observed. However, just as he expected, after the fleet approached, the giant ship also began to turn its guns and launched an attack in his direction. Another Siri-class battlecruiser was hit by the particle light spear and silently shattered in the universe, turning into countless wreckage fragments. "Every ship will enter irregular navigation immediately," Lepick ordered, getting all the warships moving. No matter what, even if the opponent's energy weapon had the speed of light, it would take a minute for the attack to reach them, so it could still be avoided. The biggest challenge was when the distance got shorter and shorter, and the opponent's powerful shots would be harder to miss. In other words, every time the opponent fired, their side would undoubtedly lose a warship. To prevent himself from being killed unjustly, Lepick specially chose a Uref-class cruiser as his command ship. He knew that the opponent's super laser cannon, which was gradually charging with great power, would definitely target the Siri-class battlecruisers first. The distance was getting closer, getting closer. The attack of the particle light spear was already 1 shot at a time. The Xiaolu people had lost 5 more Siri-class battlecruisers, but now all of them shared the same hatred, their eyes flashing with a fierce scarlet light, just waiting to rush to the battleship, and then a killing spree. However, when they were very close, the giant ship suddenly stopped shooting. Before General Lepik could react, he heard the radar operator almost screaming, "General, enemy ship! The enemy ship is starting a hyperspace jump." Chapter 1847, Levik's War to Destroy the Country, 7. "What did you say? Are they going to run away?" Lepix rushed over angrily, staring at the screen of the hyperspace detector. A terrifying realization struck him. Since this battleship had such an ultra-long-range attack capability, why would it confront them head-on? They could indeed leave through a hyperspace jump, wait for another 10 days or so, and then return when chaos and despair had once again gripped his forces. They could repeat the actions of the past few days, exhausting his fleet. The Xilu Empire would eventually perish amid this relentless attrition. If they truly did this, the Xilu Empire might not survive more than 3 months. Under General Lepix's desperate gaze, the super battleship entered a hyperspace jump and disappeared from the detector in an instant. Ouch! General Lepix could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He tore his military uniform to pieces and roared into the sky. However, a communication from the direction of Levik's planet soon snapped him out of his rage. It made General Lepix realize that what he had just imagined was not the worst-case scenario. The intruder had no intention of letting them live for 3 more months. The communication from Levik's planet came directly from the Great Siratut. It was filled with all kinds of meaningless curses and crazy words, but General Lepix understood the Emperor's message. The 5,600-meter-long supership had not left with a hyperspace jump. Instead, their hyperspace jump had taken them directly to Levik's planet. "No!" General Lepix roared loudly, his voice tinged with despair. How did they do it? How did they do it? It was simply impossible to make a short-distance hyperspace jump within the same planetary system. Planetary systems serve as the endpoints of hyperspace jumps, and their internal mass projections are quite complex. Hyperspace jumps within planetary systems are akin to driving a speedboat on a large beach covered with reefs. For a hyperspace jump that is millions of times the speed of light, it only takes an instant to cross the size of a planetary system. In such a short period, all stars form mass projections that tear the spacecraft into pieces or pull it into unknown directions. So how was it possible to do this? General Lepix stared blankly at the hyperspace communication sent back from the armed space station near Levik's planet. In the video, the long and massive battleship was adjusting its direction and entering the planet's synchronous orbit. The location was above the Kryak Palace, the capital of the planet. His capital was about to be attacked, and he had deployed almost all his warships. No matter how fast these warships were, it would take 3 days to return. Despair. This was despair. At this moment, the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier, which had jumped to the vicinity of Levik's planet, began its attack. This was their plan: use the ultra-long-range shooting of the particle light spear and the jump ability of the Forerunner engine to outmaneuver the massive fleet of the Xilu Empire. Only a hyperspace engine equipped with Forerunner technology could make short-distance jumps within a planetary system. The Forerunner engine could ignore the influence of astral mass projections to a certain extent. Now, the main fleet of the Xilu Empire had set off and was 550 million kilometers away, chasing the Eternal. Some of the remaining warships were also attracted by the Normandy and were circling more than 1 million kilometers away. There was almost no defense around Levik's planet now. The bottom of the eternity began to unfold, and one Steadfast-class cruiser after another descended vertically. They then activated their engines and entered combat mode. Following the Steadfast-class cruisers were 4 Double-Blade-class electronic warfare light cruisers. These immediately launched a powerful electromagnetic interference field, cutting off most communications around the planet Levik. Simultaneously, the hangar platforms around the Eterni TIE fully extended, and 200 Phantom fighters and Viking fighters took off one after another, rushing toward the surrounding space stations and other facilities like hungry wolves pouncing on prey. It was a spectacular sight. Several armed space stations set up by the Xilu people in synchronous orbit fired back, but they were quickly targeted by the Steadfast-class cruiser's supermatter electromagnetic guns. After a single volley, one of the space stations was blown to pieces. The densely packed turbolaser cannons and missile launchers on the Eternity unleashed a torrent of firepower. Guided by the most advanced fire control system, they instantly targeted and destroyed more than a dozen large and small space stations and hundreds of satellites. Chaos erupted around the planet Levick. The remaining defense forces, consisting of only a few cruisers, lacked offensive capabilities. Consequently, the planetary assault aircraft carriers could not withstand the powerful firepower of the Eternity and were destroyed one after another. Only more than 4,000 Xilu drones, scrambled in a desperate defense, continued to resist. However, these drones, though difficult to deal with, posed no threat to the large warships. Resistance around Levick's planet soon became sporadic. An orbital defense cannon on the ground was obliterated by a particle light spear, turning it into a volcano. The Eternal super aircraft carrier then adjusted its position, maintaining a synchronous orbit above the Cryak Palace at the planet's core. The hatch below the battleship opened, revealing countless orbital drop cabins ready for deployment. Meanwhile, the Phantom fighters and Viking fighters that had taken off earlier suddenly changed direction and entered the planet's atmosphere. The Xilu drones followed closely, but were unable to enter the atmosphere alone. They burned up one after another, falling like clusters of meteors. The Phantom fighters and Viking fighters activated their cloaking devices and carried out wave after wave of airstrikes on the Cryak Palace, despite the ground's anti-aircraft firepower. Inside the orbital drop cabins, Huang Yehao and the 300 soldiers of the Fourth Army, led by him, were ready. Each soldier was deployed in an M9407 SOEIV individual assault orbital drop cabin, designed to provide the best protection and fastest deployment. An excited and ferocious smile appeared on Huang Yehao's face. This was why he had to join the Fourth Army. Since enlisting, endless battles had filled Huang Yehao's heart with a thirst for combat. The Fourth Army was always at the forefront of the battle. 10 seconds countdown. Prepare for orbital airborne landing, Huang Yehao shouted. In unison, the 300 soldiers of the Fourth Army roared, "I am a natural disaster! I am a natural disaster! I am a natural disaster!" Bang! The orbital drop capsule shook slightly and was launched vertically from the Eternity. The holographic screen at the bottom of the orbital drop cabin opened, revealing the planet's surface below, like the sun breaking through the clouds. The orbital drop capsule pierced through the atmosphere, and at that moment, countless anti-aircraft firepower converged on them. Reveling in the sensation of dancing on the flames of hell, Huang Yehao roared loudly, "I am a natural disaster!" Chapter 1848, Levick's War to Destroy the Country, End. Under the relentless bombardment of hundreds of fighter jets, the formidable anti-aircraft defenses surrounding Cryak Palace were systematically dismantled. The fire control systems were rendered ineffective against the stealth capabilities of the Phantom and Viking fighters. Even though the peculiar biological batteries allowed detection of these stealth fighters, the detection was too erratic to mount an effective defense. Boom, 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 boom. A squadron of Phantom fighters swooped in at low altitude, unleashing a barrage of missiles upon Cryak Palace. The ensuing explosions obliterated the anti-aircraft emplacements around the palace, sending debris skyward. The Xilu Empire, a once mighty force, had never anticipated such an assault. For centuries, since acquiring biobattery technology from ancient ruins, they had vanquished all adversaries, always the aggressors, never the victims. The capital had never faced an attack, and for the Xilu people, this was an unprecedented humiliation. Even the civilians living near Cryak Palace, who were not privileged enough to reside within its walls, found the situation inconceivable. In the sky, cluster bombs and missiles materialized seemingly out of nowhere, triggering violent explosions upon impact. Xilu soldiers fired blindly into the sky, unable to pinpoint the elusive fighters. Despite the biological batteries providing some level of autonomous detection, to the ordinary soldiers, the stealth fighters were untouchable phantoms. Before reinforcements from other airbases on Levick's planet could arrive, the combined might of the Ghost and Viking fighters had already secured air superiority over Cryak Palace. The Xilu forces were unable to mount any effective anti-aircraft defense. The Eternal super aircraft carrier, now in near geosynchronous orbit, continued its bombardment, systematically eliminating air defense positions and anti-aircraft missile sites. After the planet's sole orbital defense cannon was obliterated by the Eternal's particle spear near Kryak Palace, Levik's planet was left defenseless against the Eternal. Their fleet, consisting of over 40 Siri-class battlecruisers, each 900 meters long and 600 meters high, posed no immediate threat as they were still 550 million kilometers away. With air supremacy secured and ground defenses suppressed, the Eternal super aircraft carrier initiated its landing operation. On board, each of the 300 soldiers from the 4th Legion was equipped with an M9407 single-person orbital drop pod. These modified pods featured directional shields for protection, allowing for direct descent from low Earth orbit to the ground. Boom, 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 boom. The orbital drop pods descended like meteors, their immense kinetic energy obliterating buildings and artillery positions upon impact. As they neared the ground, reverse thrust rockets activated, mitigating most of the downward acceleration and ensuring a relatively safe landing. This method of deployment was so extreme that only the 4th Legion and the Incholi Avengers, who were no longer entirely human, could execute it. Boom. An M9407 orbital drop pod crashed to the ground, its kinetic energy causing an explosive impact that demolished a house. Huang Yehao, fully prepared, roared as he emerged from the pod, wielding his M99 Saber-type assault sniper multifunctional rifle. Huang Yao's hand fired a rapid burst, eliminating all the Shilu soldiers in his line of sight. Without pausing, he sprinted at a speed beyond that of ordinary humans, leaping over a broken wall more than 3 meters high. He threw a grenade for cover, then rolled continuously to avoid a barrage of machine gun fire. Suddenly, he sprang up and with one punch sent a Shilu soldier, nearly 2 meters tall and resembling a ferocious raptor, flying. This was an anti-aircraft missile position. Several Silu soldiers were controlling the phased array radar, locking onto the Phantom fighter in the air and preparing to fire. Now that Huang Yehao had landed, he was about to give them another chance. The M99 Saber rifle, in his hands, fired another burst, taking down several more Shilu soldiers. He then drew his polymer sword with a backhand motion and began cutting through the remaining enemies. In less than 3 minutes, Huang Yehao had single-handedly cleared the air defense missile position of more than 20 soldiers. The other soldiers of the 4th Legion, who had descended from the airborne capsules, were like tigers among sheep, easily wiping out the Shilu army near the landing point and then regrouping. The soldiers of the 4th Legion had all undergone biochemical transformation, making their physical fitness 3 to 5 times that of ordinary humans. The Shilu soldiers, due to their unique racial advantages, did not require biochemical modification and had physical fitness comparable to the 4th Legion soldiers. However, when faced with the 4th Legion, the Shilu soldiers were still eliminated with ease. The combat awareness and skills of the 4th Legion were on a completely different level. The 300 soldiers of the 4th Army who landed in the orbital drop capsules immediately created a breach in the ground defense circle of the Kryak Palace. Since the success of direct orbital bombing tactics using orbital drop pods in the Battle of Terminus, under Tang Xiao's leadership, the 4th Civilization's military had been vigorously developing orbital airborne troops. This included not only the construction of military units, but also the continuous improvement of related tactics and equipment. The 300 soldiers formed breakthroughs at 300 locations, then began to gather into small teams of 5, expanding the safety area of the landing site. Soon after, 120 D-77TC Pelican transport planes, which had taken off from the Eternal super aircraft carrier, descended from the sky. Each Pelican carried 15 soldiers and a Scorpion tank. Upon landing, they deployed portable deflector shields to form solid defensive bunkers, allowing more soldiers to gather. The Pelican transport aircraft were highly efficient, capable of vertical takeoff and landing at very high speeds. It took less than 30 minutes to transport soldiers from the Eternal. Simultaneously, 3 100-meter-long Hercules transport ships appeared in the sky, each carrying 2 huge mechas. After the Hercules transport ships landed, a total of 6 giant mechas unfolded from their folded and reloaded states. the Thor's Hammer particle beam cannon in their hands and the four 350mm caliber Punisher cannons on their backs demonstrated the immense firepower of these giant mechas. These were the mass-produced Thor mechas, smaller than the prototype's height of over 20 meters, standing at only 16 meters. However, thanks to the application of various mature technologies, the firepower configuration of the mass-produced Thor mechas had not weakened at all. The Thor mecha carries the firepower equivalent to that of an armored battalion. When the first wave of Pelican transport planes landed and 3 Hercules transport planes delivered 6 Thor mechas to the ground, the army of the Dawn Principality gained an indomitable advantage within the vast Kryak Palace. Kryak Palace, akin to a modern small town, has a complex internal terrain. Thus, the army of the Dawn Principality advanced cautiously, leveraging the formidable firepower of the Thor mecha to progress step by step. Inside Kryak Palace, the Shilu soldiers, all of the red caste with red skin, began to gather for a counterattack. As a warrior caste, their formidable fighting prowess was ingrained in their genes. Thousands of large red caste Shilu warriors with well-developed hind limbs roared and charged toward the landing defense line of the Dawn Principality soldiers. However, they were met with a barrage of intense firepower. The soldiers of the Principality of Dawn had set up M247 general-purpose heavy machine guns and E-Web heavy blaster machine guns, forming crossfire points. The overwhelming firepower forced the powerful Shilu soldiers to abandon countless corps and retreat in panic. In low Earth orbit, the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier continuously fired according to the ground army's coordinates. Any attempt by the Shilu army to launch a large-scale counterattack and gather troops was immediately detected by the Eternal, which monitored the battlefield at all times. At the first opportunity, the Eternal would deploy several turbo-laser turrets to conduct the initial round of air bombing on the assembled enemy targets. This was just the beginning. Viking fighters and ghost fighters followed with low-altitude strafing and missile bombing, precisely targeting and eliminating the Shilu's heavy tanks and armored units. Subsequently, the 4th Legion soldiers executed breakthroughs and precise kills, paving the way for the frontal advance of the Dawn Principality army. This systematic approach left the Shilu Empire's army in disarray, unable to maintain any semblance of a normal formation. Under this overwhelming firepower, the Shilu Empire's army was decimated, and several counterattacks were repelled. The army of the Principality of Dawn seized this opportunity to advance towards the core hinterland of Kryak Palace. The Shilu Empire's fleet did not return until 4 hours after the Marines on the Eternal began to land. Most of the returning warships had been stationed near the planet, attempting to encircle and destroy a stealth warship, providing coordinates for the Eternal. These warships, located about 1 million kilometers away when the Eternal jumped to the vicinity of Livik's planet, returned for rescue as soon as possible. The fleet included 10 Siri-class battlecruisers, 15 Ulif-class cruisers, and 30 slave cruisers. Although dispersed in formation, this fleet was strong enough to engage the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier head-on. At this time, the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier was continuously unloading its Marines and unable to conduct tactical maneuvers. It relied on its powerful deflector shield and thick armor to hold its position and fire back. Surrounding Steadfast-class cruisers and double-blade electronic warfare light cruisers also joined the battle group. Thus, the first real fleet battle between the two sides since the war began officially broke out. As in the previous battle, upon detecting the approaching Shilu fleet, the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier immediately. The ship turned its bow and began to fire with its 3 particle light spears. Facing the Siri-class battlecruiser, the 3 consecutive shots of the particle light spear hit their target with precision, leaving no room for suspense. After losing 4 Siri-class battlecruisers, the fleets from both sides finally engaged in a fierce exchange of fire. The Eternity, along with its escort warships, maintained a defensive formation backed by Levik's planet, creating an unbreakable barrier that gave the Xilu Empire's fleet no chance at all. The warships of the Xilu Empire were no match for the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier and the Steadfast-class cruiser equipped with supermatter electromagnetic guns. When bombarded from a distance, they suffered heavy losses after several rounds of salvos. Finally, under the command of the Xilu commander, the fleet rushed towards the Dawn Principality's position at full speed, preparing for a melee. Meanwhile, 550 million kilometers away, the fleet of General Lepik, the supreme military commander of the Xilu Empire, was advancing slowly like a snail. In reality, their speed was not slow. They had reached millions of kilometers per hour under repeated acceleration. However, in the vastness of the universe, this impressive number still seemed like a snail's pace. General Lepik, frustrated, ordered several warships to forcibly enter hyperspace jump, hoping to replicate the feat of the eternal super-aircraft carrier that had appeared directly near the planet Levik. But the battleships collapsed and disintegrated without any warning, highlighting the enormous technological gap between jumping and leaping. With no other option, Lepik led his main fleet using sublight engines to sail to Levik's planet. Even with the most optimistic estimates, it would take them 2.5 days to return to Levik's planet. General Lepik maintained constant contact with the supreme ruler of the Xilu Empire, the Great Siratut. He kept encouraging Siratut, assuring him that when his main fleet arrived, their powerful firepower would be able to annihilate the mysterious fleet. Lepik was confident that the eternal super-aircraft carrier could not withstand the might of 40 class battlecruisers. However, as the Eternity's landing operation unfolded, General Lepik noticed a change in Siratut's demeanor. The Great Siratut became increasingly irritable and prone to swearing at the slightest disagreement. This negative emotion began to affect everyone around him as they sensed the impending doom. Chapter 1849, Beheading, Part 1. The capital of the Xilu Empire, Planet Levik, command center of Kryak Palace. The sound of gunfire and explosions echoed clearly even within the command center, creating a tense atmosphere that permeated every corner. Moments ago, the hated invaders had organized 5 transport ships to conduct a forced airborne assault, but they were repelled by the Xilu Imperial Guards. Despite this, the proximity of the battle still terrified the senior leaders in the command center. Bastard! 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 The Great Siratut yelled angrily in the Xilu people's slang, smashing everything he could lay his hands on. His troops were suffering an unprecedented blow. Where are my troops? Where are my troops? Where's Uroka's 7th Battle Group? Let them reinforce immediately. Your Majesty, General Uloka's 7th Battle Group was bombed by the enemy while they were gathering. The current situation is unknown. A staff officer next to him whispered, pointing to the sky. In the smoke-filled sky, the giant warship in low Earth orbit was still clearly visible. The ship, with its terrifying firepower and advanced jump technology, hovered ominously. Its powerful searchlights illuminated the ground, like a colossal demon in the sky. Then bring me all those green-skinned troops, Siratut demanded, referring to the armies composed mainly of green-skinned Siru people. The Siru Empire maintained more than 18 million soldiers in these forces. Although their combat effectiveness couldn't compare to the Red Caste armies, at this critical moment, Siratut had to place his hopes on them. The Chief of Staff repeatedly reminded him that it was wise to retreat from Kryak Palace now. Before General Lepik's main fleet returned, they had to do everything possible to prevent the Xilu Empire's military command system from being paralyzed. Your Majesty, we should temporarily retreat from Kryak Palace. Before General Lepik's main fleet returns, no army can approach Kryak Palace, the Chief of Staff advised. He didn't dare show the images and videos around Kryak Palace to Siratut because they were too horrific. The troops stationed near Kryak Palace were bloodthirsty and brave. They swarmed towards the palace as soon as they discovered the invaders had launched an orbital airborne landing. There were even 4 armored battle groups nearby, each with 30,000 elite soldiers and over 1,900 tanks and self-propelled artillery. During the previous invasion of the Xilu Empire, these armored battle groups had created a terrifying record by annihilating an entire enemy continent. However, this time, they didn't even have a chance to engage in direct combat. The Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier hovered in low Earth orbit, its precise strike range covering an area on the ground with a diameter of tens of thousands of kilometers, almost the entire hemisphere. Under the scanning of its powerful detection system, all large-scale military gatherings were directly bombarded by the Eternal super aircraft carrier. Even areas the Eternal couldn't target were soon bombarded by Phantom fighters and Viking fighters, dropping smart cluster bombs and causing devastating casualties. Now, the highways near Kryak Palace were a complete hell on Earth. Countless corpses were piled on top of each other, with broken limbs scattered everywhere. Destroyed tanks and armored vehicles still burned, emitting thick smoke. Craters several hundred meters in diameter marked the ground, telling of the terrible blows they had suffered. These corpses and debris completely blocked the road leading to the palace. Kryak Palace. The troops outside had set up self-propelled artillery to bomb the passages, hoping that high-explosive shells could clear a path quickly. However, this was fraught with danger. The Eternal, ever watchful in the sky, could locate these artillery positions at any moment and obliterate them with a turbo laser cannon. It was a dire situation. Both the Great Siratut and other senior generals were acutely aware of the is. Their only hope lay with the Xilu Imperial Guard stationed inside Kryak Palace, praying they could perform miracles. These elite troops, composed entirely of red-caste warriors, possessed the strength of 10 men each. The Guards' army, numbering around 10,000, had been scattered by the initial wave of 4th Legion soldiers dropped via orbital airdrop. Despite their numbers, they quickly regrouped into small teams and engaged in fierce street battles with the Marine Corps of the Principality of Dawn, who had landed in Kryak Palace. The Xilu Guards fought within every building. Their ferocious forms, strength, and well-developed hind limbs granted them unparalleled speed. Although they were no match for the Fourth Army, they easily handled the ordinary soldiers of the Marine Corps of the Principality of Dawn. The Marine Corps had to rely on their 6 Thor mechas and over 100 Scorpion tanks to advance slowly, bombing their way forward. Yet, progress remained sluggish. Kryak Palace was incredibly solid. Ordinary bombing couldn't destroy the buildings, and the current orbital bombing methods of the Eternal struggled to penetrate deep underground. From the perspective of the Dawn Principality's exploration fleet, although they had a firm grip on the chance of victory, hidden dangers persisted. If they couldn't secure victory within 2 days, the situation would deteriorate rapidly when the enemy's main fleet returned. However, they had their own plans. The Normandy flew over Kryak Palace in stealth mode, the landing ship descended, and at a location relatively distant from the main battlefield, the hatch opened. Shepard led her team out. Ghost agents Sen Lueth and their 5 subordinate ghosts accompanied them. A 10-man team, led by Ashley Williams and Caden Alanko, completed the group. These individuals had been performing various missions together for a long time and were the most elite and experienced fighters. Their mission was crucial: find the Emperor of the Xilu Empire. Once the target was confirmed, Huang Yehao and the Fourth Army would rush in from all directions to completely destroy the command corps of the Xilu Empire. As soon as they emerged, Senluo, Death, and the other 7 ghost agents vanished into thin air, their whereabouts unknown. Shepard and the others moved towards the area with the most frequent internal communication signals within Kryak Palace, like sharp knives cutting through the chaos. Chapter 1850, Beheading, Part 2. All the Xilu Imperial Guards that appeared along the way were unable to stop Shepard's team, especially Shepard, who charged forward bravely and fearlessly like a god of death. Her strength was not inferior to that of the Red Xilu warriors. A single collision could knock them to the ground. Her marksmanship was perfect, and with the sense of the Force in her mind, she could even spot enemies hiding in corners and then shoot them through the wall with one shot. In fact, in Shepard's team, including Shepard herself, Caden Alanko, and 3 other warriors, they all had this heightened sense. This intuition allowed them to think more clearly, understand the situation more accurately, and occasionally even predict what would happen a few seconds later. The instructors from Holy Spirit Academy told them that this was the Force. However, because the density of midi-chlorians in their bodies currently did not meet the standard, they could not use it more effectively for the time being. But researchers at Holy Spirit College also said that they were studying implants to allow force sensors to better utilize the force. In addition to killing enemies on the battlefield, Shepard continued to give orders to her teammates, directing them to quickly intersperse and cover each other on the battlefield, and launch heavy fire bombardments against the enemy's newly assembled squads. It was completely unimaginable how one person could do this, and Shepard was really standing on the battlefield, harvesting the lives of Xilu warriors with unimaginable efficiency. This kind of existence is the strength of a legendary-level warrior. This can no longer even be described as the king of soldiers. She was simply a killing machine with the highest precision, bringing indiscriminate death to the enemy. Under her leadership, this team was like a sharp blade, pointing directly at the heart of Cryak Palace. Her determination and courage infected every team member, making them fearless and move forward courageously. They acted quickly and decisively without any hesitation. The Xilu guards were also thinking of ways to counterattack. In order to block the rapidly advancing team, they pulled out a tank formation that had finally been saved from the bombing and prepared to annihilate Shepard with absolute firepower. But as soon as this tank formation completed its assembly, the surrounding soldiers were instantly shot in the head by bullets that seemed to appear out of nowhere. They didn't even know where the enemy was. Those tanks had no choice but to fire all their machine guns and main guns wildly in front of the invisible killer. However, this could not save their lives. Buzz! Invisible force shockwaves spread out instantly, and the crew members in the tank all had splitting headaches, and the weaker ones had their heads explode. Then, the ghost agents calmly approached these incapacitated tanks and placed bombs in the engine positions. Boom, boom. With bursts of explosions, the tank formation became wreckage. "Your Majesty, there is no other way. Let's escape!" In the command center of Cryak Palace, the Golden Bishop shouted to the Great Siratut, "We have already investigated, and there are currently 2 underground tunnels. The passage is safer." "Escape?" The Great Siratut looked at the Golden Bishop, his eyes full of madness. "Don't you know the consequences of the fall of the Holy Tower? Don't you know the consequences of the fall of the military factory? Don't you know we have all the power inside Cryak Palace? Even if I escape, what's the use? No. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Your Majesty, we can no longer stop their attack. These invaders have several elite troops and our guards are no match at all," said the Golden Bishop. "Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Escape will never happen." The Great Siratut roared loudly. His eyes were red, and he was almost crazy. "I want them all to be buried with me. Yes, they all have to die. They all have to die." He looked up at the sky and screamed, staggering and almost falling, "Your Majesty!" The Golden Bishop hurried over to help him, but the Great Siratut pushed him away. Suddenly, Siratut stopped, no longer roaring or screaming, though the madness in his eyes remained. "Send the order. Close all border posts. Shut down all customs. Halt all entry verifications. Recall all patrol ships and convoys to Levick Planet. And then, he laughed maniacally, grabbing the Golden Bishop's clothes. "Then, my dear Bishop, delete all information about the God of Rot from our database. Oh, and for Research Institute number 101, which specializes in studying the God of Rot, initiate the sealing procedure immediately. Lock the doors and turn off the life support system. I don't want to see a living soul inside." "Your Majesty, could it be that you—" The Golden Bishop was shocked. "Ah, yes, it's this could it be," Siratut said coldly. "I said, everyone must die. Everyone must die." Listening to the explosions and gunshots getting closer outside, the Golden Bishop's expression turned crazed. He nodded fiercely and said, "Yes, Your Majesty. That's right. Everyone must die." When Huang Yehao led the soldiers of the 4th Legion, together with Shepard's team, to launch the final attack on the central palace of Cryak Palace, they were met with a raging fire inside. Shepard immediately notified the Eternal, which used one of the battleship's mass accelerators to fire several fire-extinguishing cannonballs. The liquefied inert gas spread quickly, extinguishing the main fire within just 10 minutes. Even so, when they finally entered the central palace without firing a shot, they were greeted by countless corpses. On the throne sat a charred corpse wearing a crown, presumably the emperor of the Xilu Empire. Below the throne, More than 200 officials at all levels, dressed in their most luxurious clothes, knelt in a posture of worship. The core civil and military officials of the Xilu Empire had committed collective suicide. Not only that, they had also destroyed the planet-level computers underground in the palace, obliterating all databases to ensure that the Principality of Dawn would not inherit any of their knowledge. On this day, the Xilu Empire met its end. After occupying the central palace, the Eternal used a high-power communicator to issue a global announcement on Levick planet, informing everyone that Kryak Palace had been captured, the Emperor had committed suicide, and the Xilu Empire was no more. Tashtar, Chapter 1851, The Aftermath of Destruction, Part 1. The Xilu Empire, which had dominated one of the unknown star regions for hundreds of years, was finally destroyed by the attack of the Eternal super aircraft carrier. Why is it said to be legal? Because the Marines of the Eternal, Shepard's team, and the Fourth Army actually destroyed less than 1% of the power of the Xilu Empire. However, they did manage to kill the supreme rulers of the Xilu Empire, including the Emperor, and paralyze the highest administrative institutions of the Xilu Empire. Thus, this can be considered a war between the Principality of Dawn and the Xilu Empire, with the Principality of Dawn emerging victorious. In the capital of the Xilu Empire, the Kryak Palace was captured. After the news of the Emperor's suicide spread, it caused an uproar throughout the Xilu Empire. The caste hierarchy in the Xilu Empire was very strict, and the Great Siritut and the Golden Bishop, as the highest political and religious leaders, also led the thinking of the people of the Xilu Empire. The downfall of the Great Siritut was a shock akin to a devout Christian hearing that Jesus led an army to attack, only for the army to be completely destroyed and Jesus himself killed by the enemy. This was the level of shock experienced by the people of the Xilu Empire. The defeat of the Great Siritut almost overturned the beliefs of all Sirui people. After confirming the death of the Great Siritut, Lieutenant General Hiru sent a notice to the entire sector. It demanded the surrender of the entire Xilu Empire and announced the abolition of the caste system. The notice primarily declared that the Piak people would be freed from their slave status and would obtain the same citizenship rights as the Xilu people. This was a significant point because it meant that the Eternal, a super battleship, would personally ensure the protection of the Piak people's rights. If any Xilu people attempted to enslave the Piak people, the Eternal super aircraft carrier would uphold justice for the Piak people. To ensure the commitment to the independence of the Piak people, Lieutenant General Hiru handed over all 1.7 million firearms of various types seized from the arms warehouse of the Kryak Palace to the Piak people. This included 110 blaster rifles, 590,000 projectile rifles, and more than 8,000 heavy machine guns, light machine guns, and general machine guns of various types. In fact, this subversive decision left even the Piak people themselves a little at a loss. When the Dawn Principality handed those weapons into their hands, many Piak people, still influenced by years of subjugation, knelt down and offered the weapons back to the Xilu people. Objectively speaking, the physical forms of the Xilu people and the Piak people were very similar, and even the most primitive body shape of the Piak people was far behind that of the Xilu people. Coupled with thousands of years of slavery and brainwashing, many Piak people believed they were inherently inferior to the Siru people. This made it unrealistic to expect them to immediately become masters of their own fate. Even with the Eternity super aircraft carrier stationed, getting rid of slavery and casteism would be a long-term process. In addition to distributing weapons to the Piak people, Lieutenant General Heiru also promulgated a series of measures. These included the elimination of the existing administrative agencies of the Xilu people and the establishment of new administrative agencies that included the Piak people. Measures were also taken to reorganize the existing public security and military establishment of the Livik planet. Normally, even with a super battleship like the Eternal, such changes would be challenging to implement. At its command, it would still be completely impossible to overthrow the Xilu Empire, which has a population of more than 10 billion. However, the Dawn Principality exploration fleet actually did it. Due to the peculiar biobattery technology of the Xilu Empire, their factories did not need to occupy large areas. Coupled with the extreme caste system and centralized governance of the Xilu Empire, they concentrated almost all their industries in the Kryak Palace. Once this fell, other areas of the Xilu Empire lost their industrial capabilities almost instantly. This allowed the Dawn Principality's exploration fleet, which occupied the Kryak Palace, to suppress the entire Levic planet with just one division of Marines. When the news of the fall of the Kryak Palace and the suicide of all the civil and military officials of the Xilu Empire by the Great Siritut reached General Lepic's fleet, General Lepic was already prepared for the worst. Although extremely frustrated, General Lepic had to admit that it was his reckless transfer of the Empire's main fleet that gave the Dawn Principality fleet the best opportunity to invade. The Empire's failure was evident, and it had a direct relationship with his actions. Despite this, General Lepic never intended to betray the Xilu Empire. Although his relationship with the Golden Bishop was very tense, and he often felt the urge to confront him, at the critical moment of life and death for the Xilu Empire, he stood up without hesitation. He positioned himself between the Dawn Principality invaders and the Xilu Empire. General Lepic immediately ordered all fleets to reorganize, breaking the communication silence. All battleships turned around and entered hyperspace to jump to the planet Kruda, the closest to Levic's planet. He announced that he refused to accept all proposals from the Principality of Dawn. The main fleet under his command remained loyal to the Xilu Empire and would continue to exist as the exiled military government of the Xilu Empire, commanding its vast territory. Upon returning to the planet Kruda, General Lepic issued several wide-area communications. First, he declared himself the acting emperor of the Xilu Empire. Second, he announced the establishment of a military government in exile on the planet Kruda, refusing to recognize the traditional Xilu Empire regime supported by the Dawn Principality. Third, he declared the Principality of Dawn as a despicable invader and called on every citizen of the Xilu Empire to stand up and fight against the Principality of Dawn to the end. General Lepic also announced that his main fleet would be reorganized into the Xilu Restoration Army, with the mission of re-establishing the Xilu Empire to its peak glory. He understood that instead of bringing back the only remaining main fleet in his hands to face off against the Dawn Principality fleet with the Eternity super aircraft carrier and risking a battle with a winning rate of only 40% at most, it was better to hold on to the main fleet. There might be another turning point in the future. Of course, in the eyes of Shepard and Vice Admiral He Ru, Lepic's fleet was undoubtedly a group of interstellar pirates. However, the Eternal super aircraft carrier had to remain on the Levic planet to provide force deterrence for the planet, where the planetary administrative agency had just been destroyed and was in complete chaos. Otherwise, even if the Eternal super aircraft carrier left for less than a day, hundreds of uprisings and riots would likely start immediately on the planet. Facing such a problem, Lieutenant General He Ru, as the commander of the exploration fleet, naturally had comprehensive plans and preparations. The so-called exploration fleet, as the name suggests, is a fleet that operates with a high degree of autonomy during its missions, allowing it to make decisions based on the specific circumstances it encounters. From this perspective, the authority held by Lieutenant General He Ru is likely greater than that of General Lingliang, the governor of the Svenna sector and army general. At least General Ling does not have the authority to decide whether to engage in war or peace with another civilization. Lieutenant General He Ru arrived at the center of the Eternal, a very large laboratory. Upon receiving news of his visit, more than 20 thin engineers and scientists, wearing robes and holding scepters, emerged from the laboratory. "Vasari!" Lieutenant General He Ru nodded proactively, saluting the group of scientists. "I think we can proceed with the original plan. Phase Engineer, Mr. Grandison." The leading Vasari engineer accepted Lieutenant General He Ru's salute calmly, nodded in greeting, and said, "I have been monitoring the recent unrest on Levic's planet. I must remind you that once we begin constructing this experimental hyperspace Stargate, the rebels will immediately perceive it as the greatest threat, and we only have one set of Stargate cores." Hiru nodded and replied, I understand. If the core of this Stargate is destroyed, we will have to return to Dawn Planet and reassess our situation. If it comes to that, it would essentially mean our exploration mission has failed. He paused and continued, we have conducted extensive research. Most of Levi's planet's industrial facilities, especially high-precision ones, are concentrated in Cryak Palace. Other areas, including the interstellar shipyard, are primarily for processing work. Therefore, the production capacity of Cryak Palace is irreplaceable. According to the latest ground reports, the Xilu Empire's last resistance has collapsed. It is time to start transforming their production lines to produce the parts we need. Then, let's get started, Grandison, the Vasari engineer, said as he walked directly towards the warehouse. In the following period, the main task of the Dawn Principality's exploration fleet was to continuously win over the Piaik people and divide the Xilu people. They provided weapons and equipment to the Piaik people, encouraging them to break free from the control and slavery of the Xilu people and fight for their own destiny. After the news of the suicide of Siratut, the emperor of the Xilu Empire, spread across Levik's planet, uprisings and riots reached their peak almost instantly. Dozens of serious uprisings and riots occurred daily. The Xilu people were absolutely unwilling to accept the overthrow of their emperor. What was even more intolerable was that their former slaves were now allowed to enjoy the same citizenship rights as them. This was a complete disgrace. As a result, a large number of Xilu troops refused to recognize the Dawn Principality's exploration fleet. The Xilu generals who commanded these armies rebelled with cavalry, occupying cities and spaceports, refusing to acknowledge the rule of the Dawn Principality, and were determined to resist to the end. Lieutenant General Hiru's response was simple and direct. Initially, he ordered the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier to fire back, using extremely powerful turbo-laser cannons to bomb all the assembled Xilu troops. However, as the war situation became more complicated, this method could no longer quell the Xilu people's rebellion. So General Hiru decided to mobilize the nearby Piaike people. These Piaike people, who had been slaves of the Xilu people for hundreds of years, had developed a deep-rooted servility. For years, many believed that the Piaike people were destined to be slaves to the Xilu from birth. However, after receiving weapons and an independence guarantee from the Principality of Dawn, and seeing the Eternal Super Aircraft Carrier illuminating the sky with its powerful searchlights like a god, some Piaike people finally took their first step towards resisting their fate. The first act of resistance by the Piaike people occurred at a seaside port called Keda. On that day, the Xilu forced the Piaike to rob a transport ship coming off the Eternity. Unable to bear the oppression any longer, and led by a courageous leader, the Piaike people revolted. They attacked the Xilu with guns, teeth, and claws, killing all the Xilu supervisors within 10 minutes. Inspired by the broadcasts from the Eternal, they declared Keda Port as their own. The Eternal immediately acknowledged their declaration of independence and sent transport ships to deliver food, weapons, and ammunition. Thus the St. Piaike Independent Army was established at Keda Port. Even those who lacked the courage to face the Xilu directly began to secretly escape to Keda Port to join the resistance. This was just the beginning. The Piaike Independence Army began to emerge in large numbers across the planet Livik. Within days, they had occupied 7 cities, and over 5,000 Piaike people had risen up in resistance. With the support of the Eternity, a joint command headquarters was established to coordinate the independent armies across different locations. Meanwhile, the Dawn Principality's exploration fleet had eliminated all remaining Xilu resistance inside the Cryak Palace and captured hundreds of thousands of Xilu. However, with only 9,000 Marines on the Eternity, managing the prisoners and defending the palace was a significant challenge. Several Xilu troops attempted counterattacks but were repelled by the Eternal's firepower. Yet, as time passed, more Xilu troops began to gather outside the Cryak Palace, making a second offensive inevitable. Time was of the essence. Vasari engineers began their work, selecting compliant individuals from the yellow caste of the Xilu to repair and transform industrial production lines in the Cryak Palace for the production of Stargate materials. However, their estimates indicated that it would take over a year to complete the Stargate at the current pace. Far too long. Therefore, they needed the help of the Piike people. Chapter 52, Vasari Dawn. Planet Dawn, Grand Duke's Mansion. A Vasari man, holding a scepter and wearing a robe, slowly walked into the office of Grand Duke Tang Xiao. He bowed and said, "Your Excellency, our experimental phase core number 1 has just resonated. It seems the Eternal Exploration Fleet has activated the core of the experimental Stargate and is beginning its construction." Tang Xiao, buried in a mountain of documents, replied without looking up. "It appears Shepard and his team have found a suitable planet and are preparing to build a Stargate to use as our forward base. How is your progress? We need to complete the docking work as soon as possible to ensure our Stargate operates smoothly. This is just a primary Stargate, capable of one-to-one navigation. The phase theory involved is not particularly advanced. However, with our current production technology, this is the best we can achieve." The Vasari man explained. The primary Stargate essentially stabilizes and extends the hyperspace channel. It's similar to the technology used by the Galactic Republic in the battle in the model sector 3 years ago. However, our Vasari phase technology is far superior. They can only stabilize existing channels, but we can open new ones. Tang Xiao finally looked up and addressed the Vasari man. "High Priest Shadili, it's not that I doubt the technical capabilities of the Vasari, but the cost of the Stargate is currently too high for us. If we didn't need an advanced base in the unknown starfield, I wouldn't have approved its construction. Therefore, I must ensure everything goes smoothly." High Priest Shadili laughed. "I firmly believe that when the Stargate network covers every planet, our empire will be stronger than ever. But now, this is just the first step." Tang Xiao nodded. "Then, expedite the construction of the Stargate between planet Rendili and planet Dawn. This is our most urgent route. However, we must keep the Stargate's construction secret. If the Galactic Empire discovers it, they will undoubtedly launch an attack." "Absolutely," replied High Priest Shadili. "Then, make arrangements for me. I will visit Planet Carl in the next 3 days to inspect the Vasari's construction efforts," Tang Xiao said, pressing a button on his desk. A soft female voice responded from the other end of the communication. "You have a meeting this afternoon to discuss the progress of Rendili's planet migration plan. Do you need to cancel it?" "No, I'll attend the meeting and then head to Planet Carl," Tang Xiao replied. "Understood. I'll make the arrangements immediately." High Priest Shadili chuckled. "Your presence brings great honor to Planet Carl. It is a beautiful planet, and with our Vasari construction, it is becoming extremely powerful." The afternoon meeting. The meeting was chaired by Adele Ulan. Over the past 3 years, her childish demeanor had gradually faded. As she began to take over the business of Rendili Interstellar Power Company and oversee the overall relocation of planet Rendili, her temperament became more noble. Her once immature but beautiful appearance had matured, becoming more delicate and striking. Just sitting there, she commanded the attention of the room. When Tang Xiao entered the venue, Adele Ulan stood up first and bowed gracefully. "Your arrival is a great honor for me, sir." Xiao waved his hand and said, "According to the report I received from the National Security Bureau yesterday, over the past 6 months, the intelligence personnel of the Galaxy Empire have been increasingly probing our intelligence. I believe this indicates that the Galaxy Empire is once again listing us as a future target for attack. Therefore, we must be prepared for the possibility of a second outbreak of war. As long as you give the order, the entire country will mobilize its war machine for you without hesitation," Adele Ulan said, lowering his head. Tang Xiao waved his hand again and said, "I don't want to hear empty promises. I will do my best to delay the outbreak of the next war, but no one can guarantee it won't happen. Count Dooku and the Confederation of Independent Systems on planet Salukami are likely running out of time. Anyway, let's hear your report first." "Okay," Adele Ulan nodded. "We have expanded the production of whale-class passenger carriers. The number of whale-class passenger carriers currently operating on the route has reached 16,000. Including other ships, we have seen the number of immigrants on the planet Rendili reach its highest peak in the past year, averaging 170 million people per day. Tang Xiao nodded. But such a massive influx of people has also put immense pressure on the planets receiving these immigrants. The pressures of living, employment, and food have all become overwhelming. The governor of the model sector, Volgograd Kanedi, has issued 8 red alerts in a row, requesting us to suspend the importation of immigrants. Additionally, the inspection period for the temporary cities established to help immigrants adapt to life in the Principality of Dawn and to screen their composition has been reduced repeatedly from 6 months to just 1 month now. Adele Ulan opened a screen full of data. Now let's discuss the population distribution of our major planets. Tang Xiao said, "Go ahead." Adele Ulan turned to the data and said, "First, the planet Rendili. After 3 years of the population migration plan, there are still more than 480 billion people. The loss of a large number of people in a short period has also affected the major industries on Rendili to varying degrees. According to estimates, in the next 5 years, Rendili's economy will enter a period of continuous decline. This is a dangerous signal. If Rendili's economy begins to decline, and the immigrant population cannot be transformed into new economic growth points quickly, the Principality of Dawn will enter an industrial and economic vacuum period." Tang Xiao thought for a moment and said, "Let the Vasari team participate in the reconstruction work on Rendili. Last time, I asked Daphne Clement to submit the construction plan for Rendili's planetary ring to you. How did the discussions go?" Adele Ulan nodded. The construction of Rendili's planetary ring will undoubtedly stimulate industrial and economic growth and enhance the planet's defense capabilities. However, wouldn't this construction plan conflict with the current relocation plan? High Priest Shadili interjected. "This is not a contradiction. We Vasari people will help Rendili be reborn." Adele Ulan frowned slightly as she looked at the stranger who had suddenly appeared next to Tang Xiao. She knew about the existence of the Vasari people and that they had been thriving on the planet Karl in recent years, often clashing with the local residents. However, she didn't understand why this race, with a population of less than 10 million, was suddenly involved in the affairs of Rendili. "You can take a look at our plan first," High Priest Shadili said, sending a document to Adele. Ulan opened the document, and her pupils suddenly shrank as her breathing quickened. The first part of the document detailed the Vasari people's plan to build a stargate on the planet Rendili, directly connecting it to the Dawn planet. A stargate. Adele Ulan's initial reaction was disbelief, thinking she was holding the script of a science fiction movie. How could such a thing exist? She didn't need to read a detailed introduction to understand that a stargate, as its name suggests, must be an existence that transcends hyperspace channels. If such technology could be completed, the Principality of Dawn would be able to render hyperspace channels obsolete. The hyperspace channel would no longer constrain the progress of the Dawn Principality fleet. Moreover, if a stargate were built on Rendili, the planet's safety would be greatly enhanced. The defense fleet of Rendili would no longer need to be stationed there permanently, and fleets from other parts of the Dawn planet could reinforce Rendili conveniently. The relocation plan for Rendili was possible due to an agreement between Tang Xiao and Palpatine, which allowed the Galactic Empire to release the Rendili hyperspace channel. However, if the Galactic Empire and the Principality of Dawn entered a state of war again, the hyperspace channel would be blocked, isolating Rendili once more. But with a Stargate, this isolation would no longer be an issue. Rendili would become an integral part of the Principality of Dawn. Adele Ulan was both fearful and surprised as she read the plan. The document outlined a strategy for the Rendili Interstellar Power Company to establish industry on Rendili. The first step was to start constructing a star ring around the planet, which would drive the transformation of Rendili's local industry. Simultaneously, the construction of the Stargate would be carried out in secret, requiring the company to select a discrete area for the project. The migration of Rendili's population would continue, but at a slower pace, turning it into a long-term effort spanning decades or even centuries. This would alleviate the population pressure in other star regions of the Dawn Principality. After reading the plan, Adele Ulan nodded to High Priest Shadili and said, "I understand. Rendili Interstellar Power Company will fully cooperate with the Vasari people to complete the transformation of Rendili. According to this plan, the production of whale-class passenger ships will be completely suspended. The current fleet of 16,000 ships can meet all the needs of population migration. The industrial production capacity of Rendili Interstellar Power Company will be focused on the construction of the Star Ring and its ancillary facilities. The other officials present did not need to know the specifics of the Star Ring's ancillary facilities. Adele Ulan continued to report on her population relocation plan. In 3 years, the Liming Special Zone received 110 million immigrants, the Sethwena sector received 21.7 billion immigrants, and the Haven sector received 36.6 billion immigrants. The model sector has admitted 71 billion immigrants. Currently, the unemployment rate in these sectors has far exceeded the dangerous red line. It is only through the continuous investment of government authorities that we have managed to prevent these immigrants from falling into destitution. In the last 2 months, 19 immigration riots have erupted in the model sector, resulting in the arrest of 740,000 rioters. Regarding industrial relocation, Lundili Interstellar Power Company has moved 850 interstellar shipyards to the designated receiving area. Each planet within the 3 major star regions under our jurisdiction has been designated as a new industrial world. It is expected that these new industrial worlds will be fully operational within a year. In terms of military production, the Rendali Planet Defense Fleet currently boasts 300 Victory II-class Star Destroyers, 80 Victory-class Star Destroyers, 40 Behemoth-class battlecruisers, 20 Sova-class aircraft carriers, 40 Dunov-class battlecruisers, 30 Martha-class guided missile heavy cruisers, 20 Hell's Angel-class battlecruisers, and 50 Catastrophe-class battlecruisers. Following your previous instructions, the battleships produced by the planet Rendili have been integrated into the defense fleet. As a result, even the Galactic Empire hesitates to confront the strength of this fleet. Tang Xiao frowned after listening to Adele Ulan's report. So, our Kingdom of Dawn is actually at a low point in development due to the population relocation plan. Or should we say it is more serious, a vacuum period? Adele Ulan nodded. Yes, the number of immigrants accepted by each major star region exceeds the number of indigenous people. It will take more time for these immigrants to be truly transformed into productive forces. At the same time, these immigrants have little income and cannot contribute to consumption growth. They rely entirely on government relief. Our industrial production also needs to be ramped up to meet the needs of these immigrants. For instance, we produced 16,000 whale-class passenger carriers for the relocation plan. Although the cost of these passenger carriers is low, a significant amount of industrial production capacity was spent on them. Currently, our industrial capacity has dropped to about 80% of what it was in the post-war period, and the industry used for military production is only at 40% of its post-war capacity. Estimates suggest it will take about 3 to 5 years for the Dawn Principality to experience a second leap period due to the relocation of industry and population. Until then, we are vulnerable, Adele Ulan concluded. Chapter 1853, 3 years. Tang Xiao took a deep breath and nodded. He understood the current situation of the Dawn Principality. Governing a country, especially one that spans hundreds or thousands of galaxies, is never as simple as basic arithmetic. The addition of 600 billion people, most of whom are educated and highly qualified, is undoubtedly beneficial. However, integrating these 600 billion people is far more complex than merely adding a number to the population count. These people need to be resettled, fed, assigned duties, and enabled to start creating value. This is a long-term project. To put it bluntly, even if the population of 600 billion were on the planet Rendili, it would have taken tens of thousands of years of development to reach that number. Each individual is engaged in their own job, but the jobs they held on Rendili may not be available in the Dawn Principality. According to the statistics provided by Adele Ulan, about half of these people were engaged in work such as contract manufacturing, agency management, and other roles within the Galactic Republic. When the planet Rendili betrayed the Galactic Republic, the original work of these people became meaningless. Therefore, they need to be repositioned. As a result, the three major star sectors of the Dawn Principality, which received a large influx of people, and the planet Rendeli, which lost a significant portion of its population, have both experienced a decline in strength. Consequently, the past few years have been a period of transition for the Dawn Principality. During this time, it is crucial that the Principality of Dawn avoids any conflict with the Galactic Empire. Adele Ulan's report was thorough, and the relocation of Rendeli's population was executed efficiently. Her strong learning and management abilities greatly pleased Tang Xiao. The relocation plan is proceeding in an orderly manner. Once the construction of the Stargate begins, the biggest problem on the planet, Rendeli, will gradually be resolved, and the Principality of Dawn will surely rise again. Tang Xiao returned to his office and began to prepare for his visit to planet Karl. 3 years have passed since the war ended and the Galactic Empire was established. During these 3 years, the Principality of Dawn has seized this rare period of peace to develop rapidly, solve its internal problems, and strive to become a more stable and stronger country. This preparation is essential to face the Galactic Empire, an unprecedentedly powerful enemy in the future. In the past 3 years, the construction of the Navy of the Principality of Dawn has progressed smoothly. The entire army now boasts a formidable force of approximately 1,000 capital ships and 20,000 small and medium-sized warships. However, the upgrading of battleships has not been carried out. The Hell's Angel class, Catastrophe class, and Behemoth class remain the core and main force, with Dunov class, Aiken class, Martha class, and Doomsday Battlefield class battleships serving as auxiliaries. Given this time of peace, upgrading equipment rashly would only disrupt military production. As a party with original technological advantages, it is best to remain unchanged in response to ever-changing circumstances. When war eventually breaks out, targeted upgrades can be made based on the newly commissioned warships of the Galactic Empire. The only ongoing upgrade effort is Tyron Heavy Industries' Minotaur project, which aims to miniaturize the Behemoth-class battlecruiser. However, this project has encountered energy issues with the scaled-down Yamato cannon. Although a prototype ship was built a year ago, the formal design has not yet been completed. Additionally, there is an upgrade plan for the Cole-class battlecruiser, which is still under design and expected to commence within this year. The Principality of Dawn is undertaking a comprehensive upgrade of its more than 200 Cole-class battlecruisers currently in service. These warships, which have begun to lag behind, will be modernized to keep pace with contemporary warfare. In addition to this, the construction of the second Anchoron-class Titan battleship, the Yuanzhou, is a significant project. Originally, the Yuanzhou was scheduled to be completed last year. However, the previous invasion of the Yago-Dur system by the Galactic Republic, coupled with the planet Yago-Dur being destabilized by the immense gravity of the Trisolaran star, caused substantial damage to production on the planet. Consequently, the commissioning of the Yuanzhou has been delayed by 3 years. The difficulties in producing the Minotaur class and the delay of the Yuanzhou, combined with a population explosion and decreased productivity due to migration issues, have placed the Principality of Dawn in a precarious situation. If the Galactic Empire were to initiate a war against the Principality of Dawn, it is highly likely that the Principality would struggle to defend the 2 front lines of Yago-Dur and Eriadu. Fortunately, the previous Clone Wars, particularly the large-scale battles of the Model Sector Raid and the Yago-Dur Planet Attack and Defense Battle, resulted in significant losses for the Galactic Republic. After being reorganized into the Galactic Empire, the Imperial military remains cautious of the technologically advanced and powerful Principality of Dawn, thus avoiding the provocation of a war. The strong rise of the Vasari people has provided the Principality of Dawn with a new source of strength. Unlike the Solarians or the sparsely populated stars that are hesitant to integrate into the Fourth Civilization, the Vasari have demonstrated the superpower of a race that once dominated the galaxy. If their development on the planet Karl were detected by an intelligence agent from the Galactic Empire, it would likely cause immediate alarm. This is why Tang Xiao places such importance on the Vasari people and even plans to personally visit this race, which currently has a population of less than 10 million. A red and black spaceship, resembling a giant claw, slowly landed in the secret spaceport next to the Grand Duke's mansion on the Dawn planet. The spacecraft, approximately 400 meters long, featured a sharp hull and equally sharp extensions on both sides, giving it the appearance of a three-fingered claw. As the cabin door opened, a luxurious atmosphere enveloped the area. The interior decoration of the spacecraft was extremely opulent, exuding nobility and elegance without appearing extravagant. Instead, it conveyed a sense of the deep heritage behind the luxury. Two teams of Vasari men in robes emerged from the spacecraft, raising their hands to offer the highest courtesy to Tang Xiao and High Priest Shadili. Entering the palace-like spaceship, Tang Xiao sat on the throne in the center. Several servants promptly brought delicious wine and food. While Tang Xiao and High Priest Shadili engaged in a pleasant conversation, the spacecraft entered hyperspace, heading directly towards the planet Karl. Chapter 1854, The Development of the Vasaris, Part 1. The spaceship that Tang Xiao was aboard was a special envoy ship for the Vasari people, named the Vorontok Envoy. Constructing such an envoy ship to a length of 400 meters and incorporating a vast amount of luxurious living space demonstrates the formidable productivity of the Vasari people. The foundation of the Vasari's productivity lies in their highly advanced nanomachinery technology. When industrial facilities, such as battleships, are being constructed, trillions of nanomachines are activated simultaneously, significantly accelerating their production speed. Currently, the Principality of Dawn is also researching nanomachines, primarily utilizing the technology of the Traders Emergency Alliance. This technology is mainly employed for the intelligent repair of the hull of the Ankaron-class Titan battleship. In other fields, nanomachines are predominantly used for maintenance and repair tasks. The main limitation is that the current nanomachines in the Principality of Dawn cannot perform more intelligent work. The Vasari people's nanomachines do not suffer from this limitation. Their nanomachines are more intelligent and complex, and when clustered together, they can link to form more sophisticated processing capabilities. Such advanced nanomachines play a crucial role in production rather than merely performing minor repairs. The Principality of Dawn is gradually beginning to adopt the Vasari's nanomachinery technology. However, since the technological systems of the Principality of Dawn and the Vasari people are entirely different, the transformation will take time. Tang Xiao and High Priest Shadili engaged in a pleasant conversation aboard the Vorontok Envoy, a ship specially built for High Priest Shadili and used for the top reception operations of the Vasari people. Tang Xiao found the Vasari race, particularly the rebellious Vasari tribe led by High Priest Shadili, to be quite appealing. This group of Vasari can be considered outliers within the Vasari Empire. Their empire was destroyed by unknown dark threats, and they have been on the run for hundreds of years. During this time, these Vasari set aside their pride as the galaxy's overlords and were willing to actively cooperate with other races, share their technology, and form larger alliances. Although most of these people, led by High Priest Shadili, had their memories erased when they boarded the Mothership, they still remembered their position. Therefore, High Priest Shadili showed great affection for Tang Xiao. Part of this affection is due to Tang Xiao's terrifying power, which the Vasari, being highly sensitive to the Force, can naturally sense. Additionally, Tang Xiao generously gifted them a rich Gaia planet, Planet Karl, from the very beginning. Despite High Priest Shadili's disdain for all races in the Principality of Dawn, including humans, and his confrontational attitude towards the Protoss, whom he regarded as a group of disgusting maggots, he remained loyal to Tang Xiao. This loyalty is a tribute to strength. From another perspective, it also reflects that a hegemonic race like the Vasari cannot be easily awakened and driven. If their strength is not suppressed, they will soon counterattack. However, if they can be suppressed, the power the Vasari unleash will far surpass that of a galaxy sector-level race like the Solarians. The rapid development of Planet Karl is proof of this. The climate of Planet Karl is suitable, with temperatures slightly higher than the Coruscant standard of 15 degrees. The average temperature ranges from 18 to 22 degrees Celsius, which is relatively warm but within the tolerance range of most organisms. Moreover, planet Karl boasts rich vegetation, diverse biological chains, stable continental plates, and convenient hyperspace channel transportation. The only drawback may be the relative lack of industrial infrastructure. If it weren't for the remote location of planet Karl, such a unique planet would have become an extremely prosperous metropolitan hub if it were situate in the inner ring of the Milky Way. Despite its isolation, planet Karl once thrived as a resort center, widely adored by wealthy individuals from across the galaxy. However, during the Clone Wars, the planet was transformed into a fortress due to the confrontation between the Fourth Civilization and the 19th Army of the Galactic Republic, causing significant environmental damage. Nevertheless, it remains a rare and beautiful planet. After Tang Xiao decided to awaken the Vasari people, he chose planet Karl as their new home. The Vasari were ecstatic upon receiving this planet. Although they had forgotten much of their past, the fear of being hunted, the despair of losing their home, and the depression of living on a battleship for an extended period were still deeply ingrained in their minds. Now, gazing at the blue sky and the endless sea, the Vasari felt they had regained everything. They immediately began establishing their own nanomedicine and medical research centers on planet Karl. Similar to the Solarians, they prioritized biomedicine as the first step in their development, recognizing that population is the most crucial resource. The first batch of awakenings included about 2,000 Vasari, and Tang Xiao also provided them with 3 million frozen embryos, which was the entire inventory of the Vasari mothership. Another 2,000 Vasari, who were traditionalists with severe hostility towards other races, were not awakened. The next actions of the Vasari bioengineers left Tang Xiao astonished. They used nanomachines to perform delicate operations directly inside the frozen embryos, and then gestated these embryos in artificial wombs. They even forced these embryos to undergo a division during their growth, resulting in about 1/3 of them becoming twins. By adjusting the growth rate, these embryos matured into young adults within 2 years and were infused with the necessary knowledge. In just 2 years, the Vasari population surged to 5.5 million. After another year of natural reproduction, they added 700,000 more babies. High Priest Sadili explained that the Vasari had completely analyzed their genetic map and understood everything about their race. The embryos from the mothership were cloned using unknown technology, which not only accelerated growth, but also ensured perfect conditions, allowing genetic manipulation to create twins and further increase the population. When asked whether this rapid growth and knowledge infusion would cause social rigidity, High Priest Sadili assured that there was no need to worry. The Vasari had encountered this situation multiple times, and given enough time and resources, they would naturally adjust their society. This adaptability was part of their legacy as the overlords of the galaxy. Thank you to the great and glorious human civilization. Long live for the 100 starting coins. Chapter 1855, The Development of the Vasaris, Part 2. The Vasari people have achieved a level of genetic mastery that even the Galactic Empire has not been able to replicate for the human race. Despite the Galactic Republic and the Galactic Empire existing for 25,000 years, they have not reached this level of genetic understanding. Historically, the Galactic Republic was a melting pot of multiple races, and their genetic technology primarily catered to the elite in the core circle, those who sought immortality and immunity to all diseases. This demand was insufficient to drive significant advancements. In contrast, the Vasaris were a centralized empire of a single race. Throughout their development, they conquered all enemies, enslaving or exterminating other races. In their galaxy, only the Vasari were held in high regard. They ruled their galaxy for tens of thousands of years, giving them a much deeper historical foundation compared to the Galactic Republic, which only nominally unified the galaxy after defeating the Sith Empire 1,000 years ago. Through nanotechnology and genetic engineering, the Vasari people achieved meticulous control over their bodies. When colonizing extremely cold planets, they could accumulate cold-resistant fat and store energy to survive without food for days. On hot volcanic planets, they could develop heat-resistant carapaces. As warriors, their muscles could become extraordinarily developed, providing immense strength. This technology allowed them to easily adjust and modify their embryos without worrying about future socialization issues. Tang Xiao's fourth civilization has lagged behind in this regard from the beginning. This is why Tang Xiao waited until 3 years ago to awaken the Vasari, a hegemonic race. If awakened earlier, neither he nor his race would have been powerful enough, and the Vasari might have become the dominant force. Therefore, after awakening the Vasari, Tang Xiao maintained a sense of urgency. Unless he intended for the Vasari to become the primary race of the fourth civilization, with humans reduced to vassals, he had to be cautious. Even though High Priest Sadili is currently loyal to Tang Xiao, this loyalty is personal and not to humanity. Given the Vasari's history as former galactic overlords, their ambitions undoubtedly persist. Fortunately, Tang Xiao controls their core technology, ensuring Vasari obedience for many years. The Vasari's development strategy is clear. Using the 3 million embryos provided by Tang Xiao, they employed genetic modification to create as many twins as possible, now effectively doubling the number of embryos. They then accelerate growth and infuse knowledge to establish their first batch of personnel, who will serve as reproductive machines. The second generation of naturally growing Vasari will undergo intensive education to enhance their social attributes. Every naturally grown embryo will also receive genetic adjustments to slightly speed up growth, increase birth rates, and eliminate infant diseases and premature deaths. In this manner, within 30 years, the Vasari population could reach 2 to 5 billion, officially becoming a powerful civilization. On the planet Karl, the Vasari have established 5 cities, 2 of which are biotechnology-centered. The Vasari people have established several key cities, each with a distinct purpose. One city serves as an education base, where all naturally grown Vasari individuals receive their education. The other 2 cities are industrial hubs, housing numerous nanomachinery factories. These factories, which could not have been built by the initial 3,000 adult Vasari alone, were constructed with the assistance of the fourth group, representing Tang Xiao's investment in the Vasari people. Now operational, these factories continuously produce various necessities for the Vasari's development, as well as products needed by Tang Xiao's Dawn Principality, such as battleships. Currently, the Vasari can only provide the Ravastra Skirmisher, a 90-meter-long heavy frigate known for its flexible maneuverability, thick armor, and twin-mounted heavy pulse cannon. The Vasari naming convention places the designer's name before the battleship model. For instance, the Lavasa fighter is officially the fighter-class heavy frigate designed by engineer Lavasa. Similarly, the Warren Tucker Deterrence is the Deterror-class envoy ship designed by engineer Warren Tucker. The Ravastra Skirmisher's excellent maneuverability allows it to turn almost as quickly as a fighter jet, eliminating the need for close-in defense guns. All its energy is directed to the heavy pulse cannon at the front. When engaging fighter jets, it charges forward to engage them directly, often destroying them with a single shot. Against larger battleships, it uses its agility to target the opponent's weakest points, concentrating its heavy pulse cannon fire. These frigates are difficult to destroy due to their thick armor and nanotechnology-enhanced materials. Weaker firepower is ineffective against them, and using battleship-level firepower on such frigates is wasteful, making them a formidable presence on the battlefield. This type of battleship highlights the technological gap between the Vasari and other races and is a primary battleship in Sins of a Solar Empire. Tang Xiao had the Navy conduct tests, revealing that one Lavasa fighter could easily defeat 10 Cobalt Alloy-class heavy frigates of the Traitors Emergency Alliance. These test results underscored the difference between game balance and real-world capabilities. The Vasari's technology is several generations ahead of the Traitors Emergency Alliance. Had there been a Lavasa fighter heavy frigate when Tang Xiao first crossed over, the 315-meter-long Hammerhead-class cruiser of the Iron Fang pirates would have been easily defeated. However, choosing the Vasari at that time would have made Tang Xiao their puppet. Due to the powerful performance of the Lavasa fighters, the Dawn Principality military has begun ordering them from the Vasari, though in limited numbers. This is partly because the Vasari do not need to allocate significant productivity to frigate production, and partly because integrating such a different warship into the existing civilization system would create logistical challenges. The Navy is primarily using Vasari technology to upgrade their existing warships, which is the right approach. The development of civilization should not result in a hodgepodge fleet, as this would cause logistical nightmares. Instead, development should be inclusive and comprehensive, ultimately achieving the same goal through different paths. This philosophy is currently guiding the Navy of the Principality. The Principality of Dawn had long decided that its main battleships would be modeled after the Amarr Empire battleships from Eve. To achieve this, they upgraded and transformed their battleship production and logistics lines. In Sins of a Solar Empire, the battleships of the Traitors' Bond Emergency Alliance served as auxiliary and supplementary vessels. Meanwhile, in Starcraft, the Tyranids' Behemoth-class battlecruisers functioned as multifunctional comprehensive battleships. The integration of technologies from different civilizations was evident as the Traitors' Emergency Alliance battleships began to incorporate the voltage-type armor of the Amarr Empire to enhance their combat capabilities. Ultimately, the various warships from different civilizations within the Principality of Dawn were integrated based on functionality, while other basic technologies remained consistent. However, Tang Xiao still had a long way to go before achieving this level of integration. Accompanied by High Priest Shadili, Tang Xiao visited each of the 5 cities of the Vasari people. This visit was primarily to demonstrate to the Vasari that they were the race most valued by Grand Duke Liming, and to highlight the friendly relationship between Tang Xiao and the Vasari people. The 5 cities built by the Vasari utilized a large number of robots and unmanned machinery, as well as a significant number of migrant workers. During the relocation plan of the planet Rendili, the Vasari, who were in urgent need of labor, accepted more than 6 million immigrants on the planet Karl. However, Tang Xiao had ulterior motives in this arrangement. He primarily handed over non-human races among the immigrants to the Vasari, such as the Rhodians, Weequays, Nyctos, and Farron people. Although the majority of Rendili's residents were human, as a superplanet with a population of 600 billion, it was not surprising that there were residents of other races. The Vasari did not have a complete naturalization and resettlement process for immigrants like other star regions in the Principality of Dawn. They had only one use for this batch of immigrants, as slaves. Despite being a galaxy-level race, the Vasari widely retained slavery. Therefore, it was clear what kind of life these immigrants, who were sent to the planet Karl as Vasari slaves, would lead. In essence, Tang Xiao sold these immigrants, primarily choosing non-human races. After all, Tang Xiao himself was human, and it was natural for him to prioritize humanity. The racial equality that the Principality of Dawn advocated was a necessity for development, not a reflection of Tang Xiao's genuine belief in racial equality. While walking through the Vasari city, Tang Xiao was deeply impressed by their advanced level of urban construction. The cities were scientifically and prophetically planned, with clear zoning and functions. They even reserved locations for many 10,000-meter-high super buildings. It was evident that the entire city layout was completed during the design and planning stages. When Tang Xiao visited the city dedicated to the education of the next generation, he was struck by the Vasari education system. Despite their strict hierarchical system, the Vasari placed great importance on education. The gaps between different classes did not exist in education, and they maintained a channel for class mobility through education. Finally, what Tang Xiao valued most was the Vasari Phase research base. Hundreds of Vasari Phase engineers studied the technologies they had once left behind, analyzing, classifying, and archiving them for future use. The technology for stargates originated from this research base. The population is still insufficient, and their industry has not reached the necessary level to complete the construction of the Stargate independently. Therefore, after completing the research on Stargate technology, the actual construction work still requires guidance from Vasari engineers. These engineers will lead the engineering team of the Principality of Dawn in the construction process. Additionally, building a Stargate necessitates addressing the differences between the two civilizations, which is why the construction currently incurs significant costs. Moreover, the Stargate technology that the Vasari people can currently study and analyze is only the most basic form. This primary Stargate provides one-to-one navigation. For instance, to facilitate communication between 3 points, A, B, and C, 2 Stargates must be built at each point to connect to the other 2 points, rather than just one Stargate that can change destinations freely. As a result, Tang Xiao has authorized the construction of only 2 Stargate channels, one from Dawn Planet to Rendili Planet, and another from the destination selected by the Unknown Star Territory Exploration Fleet to Vathian Planet in the model sector. The choice of Vathian Planet over Anaji, the sector's capital, is due to several reasons. Anaji has received a large number of immigrants, creating a mixed population with unknown compositions, which could lead to potential leaks in the Stargate's construction. Conversely, the Vathians are highly skilled in large-scale engineering and are familiar with building Stargates, making them an ideal choice. After visiting the 5 cities, Tang Xiao and High Priest Shadili discussed many future cooperation opportunities between the Vasari people and the Principality of Dawn. The most significant agreement is that Tang Xiao will send numerous professional teams specializing in engineering, scientific research, and agriculture to planet Karl. These teams will not only assist in the development of the Vasari people, but also learn from their advancements. This way, the knowledge and experience accumulated by the Vasari during their time as the galaxy's overlords can become part of the Fourth Civilization's own legacy. Chapter 1856, The Fall of Salukami Xtby, July 4th, marked the 3rd year since the establishment of the Galactic Empire. In the outer rim of the Milky Way, the once beautiful fortress planet of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, Salukami lay in ruins. The space around the planet was littered with fragments and wreckage of battleships, forming an asteroid belt of debris. In low orbit, massive pieces of metal structure floated ominously, remnants of a star ring that had been blown apart. These debris, captured by the planet's gravity, hovered in a perilous orbit, threatening to crash down and cause catastrophic damage akin to a nuclear explosion. Salukami had become a war-torn wasteland. The culprits of this devastation were still present, patrolling the planet with hundreds of terrifying warships. These included the iconic Imperial-class Star Destroyers, with their triangular wedge-shaped hulls, towering bridges, and dense arrays of turbolaser turrets. The Galactic Empire's might was on full display. Accompanying the Imperial-class Star Destroyers were thousands of smaller and medium-sized battleships, such as Aquitans-class light cruisers, Vindicator-class heavy cruisers, and Predator-class frigates. Additionally, over 100 2,200-meter-long Chaser-class aircraft carriers supported the fleet, with countless fighter jets taking off and landing on their platforms. Among these fighters were the classic V-wing fighters of the Galactic Republic and a new type of light fighter with a spherical cockpit and 2 solar panels, the TIE LN fighter. These fighters swarmed in large numbers, with each formation consisting of 24 units, resembling locusts in flight. At the center of this formidable armada, guarded like a moon among stars, was an enormous super battleship. This vessel, sharp and flat like a dagger, gleamed with a silver-gray luster under the starlight. Even the 1,600-meter-long Imperial-class Star Destroyers appeared minuscule next to it. This super battleship, the Executor-class Superstar Destroyer, measured a staggering 19,000 meters in length, dwarfing the largest warships ever owned by the Principality of Dawn and the Confederation of Independent Systems, including the 14,100-meter-long Ragnarov-class Titan battleship. The Ragnarov-class Titan battleship, once a symbol of power, now lay in ruins. The second ship of its class, the Shadow, was wrecked and stuck upside down in a desert on Salukami's southern hemisphere. The explosion that destroyed it had crystallized the entire desert, and debris from the blast covered hundreds of kilometers around it. The Shadow had been obliterated by the Executor-class Superstar Destroyer, the Executor, the first of its kind. The Executor's massive hull featured a complex of deck buildings, including the bridge, barracks, residential areas, and maintenance zones. This deck complex was so extensive that it resembled a city. The warship was armed with 2,000 multifunctional turbolaser cannons, 2,000 heavy laser cannons, 250 concussion missile launchers, 250 heavy ion cannons, 500-point defense systems, and a 40-million-ton level tractor beam. Its enormous hangar could accommodate nearly 2,000 LN fighters. Such overwhelming firepower could obliterate any target within its range in an instant. The Executor was the first gift from the Court Power shipyard to Emperor Palpatine after he took control. Unlike Lyra Blissex before, the Executor represented a new era of Imperial dominance. Now, she is the official wife of Dun Wessex and should be called Lila Wessex, just like the farce she once hosted. Compared to the Eclipse-class Superstar Destroyer, the Executor-class Superstar Destroyer is more pragmatic and simpler. It doesn't boast new technologies. Instead, it focuses on being bigger, more numerous, faster, and stronger. Not enough firepower? Increase the number of turrets. Can't fit the turrets? Expand the ship's body. Not enough energy? Install more reactors. Essentially, the Executor-class Superstar Destroyer is a supersized version of the Imperial-class Star Destroyer, featuring the same XX-9 heavy turbolaser cannon that the Imperial Navy has used since the Galactic Republic era. This cannon is practically an heirloom at this point. But no matter what, bigger is stronger, and more is even stronger. In the face of such overwhelming firepower, even the Ragnarov-class Titan battleship can only be defeated. At this moment, in the center of the bridge of the Executor-class Superstar Destroyer, a tall figure clad in black clothes, black armor, and a black cloak stood quietly, gazing through the porthole at the devastated planet Salukami. The cold mask obscured his face and expression, and only the heavy breathing from the life support device indicated that this cold, dark man was still alive. Darth Vader, the first general under Emperor Palpatine, personally led a massive fleet to crush the resistance of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, turning the planet Salukami into ruins. His command was ruthless and violent, leading to a decisive victory against General Grievous, the commander of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. General Grievous was forced to abandon the Titan battleship Shadow as bait and flee in a fighter jet. Darth Vader's fleet then obliterated all defense systems around the planet Salukami, including the armed star ring built by the Confederacy of Independent Systems. All resistance was crushed under the iron fist of the Empire. To capture the planet Salukami, Darth Vader assembled the largest fleet in history since the Galactic Republic became the Galactic Empire. The fleet included 700 battleships, primarily Imperial-class Star Destroyers, supplemented by Victory II-class Star Destroyers, Chaser-class aircraft carriers, and a small number of Jaeger-class battlecruisers used to transport fighters. Additionally, there were more than 3,000 small and medium-sized warships and 20 Cheer-class assault landing ships. Faced with such an offensive, the defense line of the planet Salukami, which had stood firm for 4 years, collapsed. Most of the defensive fleet was wiped out, with only a few managing to escape. In this final battle alone, the Confederacy of Independent Systems deployed 80 Behemoth-class battlecruisers, 25 Divinity-class destroyers, 40 Defiant-class light destroyers, 20 Higaran-class battlecruisers, 10 Lucrehulk-class battleships, and 5 Fortress-class battlecruisers that had just been commissioned. To resist the Imperial Army, they even brought out more than 60 Generous-class frigates that had long been relegated to the second line. This patchwork fleet of over 200 capital ships, along with more than 1,000 small and medium-sized warships, half of the fortress-level star rings built on the planet Salukami, and more than 40 armed space stations constituted their final line of defense. But it was still completely destroyed by the massive fleet led by Darth Vader. In fact, the original Conqueror-class battleship, equipped with the Dragon's Breath, and the even larger Destruction-class battleship were also on the planet Salukami. However, after Count Dooku saw the Galactic Empire's army approaching, he moved the 2 super battleships to the rear and did not involve them in the battle. Count Dooku planned to use the Conqueror-class battleship No. 3 and the Carnage battleship, equipped with a superweapon such as the Dragon's Breath, to launch an attack in the heart of the Galactic Empire was a bold strategy. The Dragon's Breath, a super poisonous gas, was ineffective in fleet combat, but devastating for planetary destruction. In the previous battle, Count Dooku realized that the Ragnarov-class Titan battleship was no match for the Executor-class Superstar destroyer. Thus, he considered the Destruction-class battleship his final trump card, unwilling to lose all his assets in a single confrontation. The Destruction-class battleship, based on the Conqueror class, featured a super pulse laser cannon powered by kyber crystals. This cannon, over 3,000 meters long, extended the battleship's overall length to more than 7,600 meters. Count Dooku Rey treated with this formidable vessel to the subplanet of Laxus, preparing for a final stand. With the Confederation of Independent Systems losing the planet Salukami, the Galactic Empire's fleet faced no significant obstacles in penetrating the Confederation's core. The route lacked hyperspace traffic hubs to resist the Empire's advance, leaving planets to fend for themselves. After capturing Salukami, the Empire could directly threaten the Semires, Felucia, Ossus, Laxus, and Jabium planets. Even Parmentport, the Confederation's largest industrial center and interstellar shipyard, was now vulnerable. The only significant planet remaining in the Confederation's rear was the ocean planet Dark, home to the Quarren and Mon Calamari. However, with Salukami's fall, the Mon Calamari, who opposed the war, might gain political leverage over the Quarren. Darth Vader stood on the bridge of the Executor, watching the defenses of Salukami collapse. In a voice muffled by his metal mask, he commanded, "Let the stormtroopers begin landing. Drag everyone on Salukami out and execute them." "Lord Vader, we could bomb Salukami from orbit and move directly into the Separatists' core," suggested his adjutant. Vader turned to the adjutant. Though his black helmet concealed his face, the cold aura and immense pressure made the adjutant's legs weak. "I have a use for this planet. I will use drones to film everyone on Salukami from all angles and broadcast it on the Separatist network," Vader said coldly. "If I hear such foolishness again, you will join the execution list." With that, he flicked his cloak and walked out. Cheer-class assault landing ships entered Salukami's atmosphere, followed by over a dozen Imperial-class star destroyers. The remaining Confederacy soldiers and civilians on Salukami, unable to resist, were paralyzed with fear. The Galactic Empire's brutal attack plunged the planet into deep fear and despair. The inhabitants huddled among the ruins, trembling, awaiting their doom. Many believed the Empire would annihilate Salukami for its resistance. For 4 years, their army had relied on orbital bombardment to turn the battlefield into a glassy wasteland. At least with such bombardment, death came swiftly. However, events took an unexpected turn. A large number of LAT assault transport boats and massive transport ships emerged from the battleship's hangar platform, teeming with Imperial stormtroopers. These stormtroopers, clad in white third-generation polymer alloy armor and full-coverage helmets, exuded an aura of cold ruthlessness. This perception was not far from the truth. Most of these soldiers were Sparty clone soldiers. Over time, the issue of soldier shortages was gradually resolved, allowing the growth cycle of these Sparty clones to extend to 2 to 3 years, making them relatively more stable. These clone soldiers were cold-blooded, ruthless killing machines. Upon landing, they immediately infiltrated cities and settlements, scanning every corner with life detectors. Anyone found hiding, regardless of who they were, was dragged out and thrown into a hover truck, then transported to the open areas of the city ruins. In the sky, V-Wing fighters and TIE LN fighters patrolled in groups, searching for any who might have slipped through the net. Once the number of captured individuals reached tens of thousands, the Imperial stormtroopers set up E-Web heavy blaster machine guns and opened fire on these unfortunate souls. Countless people screamed and fell into pools of blood. Some tried to escape, but it was futile. The surrounding stormtroopers methodically killed them one by one, as if it were target practice. Then they moved on to the next location, the next group of people. This was a brutal massacre, a cleansing of an entire planet. It was the Galactic Empire's, Palpatine's, and Darth Vader's response to the Confederation of Independent Systems. Chapter 1857, Two Farewells. 10 days before the fall of Salukami, when Darth Vader led a massive fleet directly towards the defense line of Salukami, Count Dooku immediately connected to Tang Xiao's communication. Count Dooku looked much older in the holographic projection. Once energetic, the wrinkles on his face now ran deep like ravines, and his majestic appearance had faded. If the war between Tang Xiao and the Galactic Republic, which lasted for 2.5 years, had exhausted him to the point of seeking peace with Palpatine, then Count Dooku, who had fought against the Galactic Republic and the Galactic Empire for 7 years, was now almost burning his life away. Planet Salukami can no longer withstand this round of attacks from the Galactic Empire. We have failed, Count Dooku's voice was hoarse. Tang Xiao just looked at him, silent, and nodded slightly. What else can you do to delay our defeat? Count Dooku asked, almost pleading. For the head of the Confederation of Independent Systems, the once highly respected master of the Jedi Order, and the leader who single-handedly founded the Confederation of Independent Systems, Tang Xiao had never seen him speak in such a tone. But there was nothing to be done. Tang Xiao still didn't speak and shook his head. Darth Sidious, he has already planned everything. The Confederacy of Independent Systems and I are just the fuse he uses to ignite internal and external conflicts. Once the bomb of the Galactic Republic is detonated, I will be useless, Count Dooku said slowly. Even if I have fought him for 7 years, it has only delayed the inevitable. No. He shook his head again, denying his own words. I did not delay this result at all. He has proclaimed himself emperor, and the Galactic Empire has replaced the Republic. Now his power is unprecedented. This is his true plan. Tang Xiao finally spoke. Come to Dawn Planet. At least, you can still be alive. What use is my life? As a banner to rally the remaining forces in the Outer Rim. Count Dooku sneered. At least, you can see the end of the Galactic Empire, Tang Xiao said. What makes you think you still have a chance to defeat Darth Sidious? Count Dooku asked. Just because you ignited this prairie fire, Tang Xiao looked at Count Dooku and said very seriously. You still haven't realized what the Confederation of Independent Systems means. Of course, this isn't strange, because as Count Sereno, you have always been aloof and have never stood on the dirty ground to look up at the world. Count Dooku showed a sarcastic smile. You mean those rebels who shout for freedom? No, I have been in contact with them for a long time, and they are also helping me harass the Galactic Empire's logistics supplies. Otherwise, do you think I could have persisted on Salukami until now? However, they can only go so far. Tang Xiao didn't want to argue with him, but just repeated, Come to Dawn Planet, there is still a chance. No. Heh. No. Count Dooku laughed. I built all this. It was I who cut across the hypocritical prosperity of the galaxy. It was I who ignited the flame of freedom. And now, I must watch all of this with my own eyes, disintegrate into ashes. I'm very sorry, Tang Xiao said lightly. Then I can only say goodbye to you. You are wrong, Darth Malthal, the Angel of Death. Tang Xiao, you will never be able to defeat Darth Sidious. He is far more powerful than you in every aspect. When everything about you collapses, your despair will be far greater than mine. Count Dooku's voice deepened. But I still want to thank you, because you told me the truth about Darth Sidious. Count Dooku's holographic projection faded, then disappeared. The conference room returned to darkness and tranquility. Tang Xiao stood there for a while and then connected to another communication. A fat gastropod race appeared in the holographic projection, the Samirs. She wore gorgeous clothes adorned with various types of jewelry. Even the 3 strands of beard on her chin were braided with gem-encrusted ribbons. This was Thunbark Tula, the parliamentary representative of the Semels people. As soon as she connected to the communication, she immediately waved her short hands and shouted loudly, Your Majesty the Governor! Your Majesty the Governor! The Salukami planet cannot be defended. We are finished! We are finished! Yes, you are indeed finished, Tang Xiao nodded. Thunbark Tula slowly lowered her hand, her face full of doubt. She wasn't truly ready to accept failure. She was seeking Tang Xiao's help. Unexpectedly, Tang Xiao didn't offer any reassurance, but instead confirmed her fears. Mr. Governor, once the Salukami planet falls, the Galactic Empire's fleet can reach the Samiris planet within 5 days, Thunbark Tula said seriously, her voice low and grave. If we don't do something, it will be difficult for us to resist this fleet of the Galactic Empire. Tang Xiao nodded and said, I know. So now you need to secretly contact Darth Vader and tell him that the Semiras will surrender. What? This is impossible. Thunbark Tula's voice suddenly rose, sharp with disbelief. I can never bow to the Galactic Empire. Neither can the Semiras. The Galactic Empire wants to ride on our heads? Dream on. We would rather fight to the last man alive. If this happens, the planet Semels will flow with rivers of blood, Tang Xiao warned. Are you kidding? Aren't you, Lord Governor? Thunbark Tula still clung to a glimmer of hope. You must have a way to defeat the Galactic Empire, right? Just like you defeated the Galactic Republic countless times before. Not this time, Senator Tula. There's nothing I can do. Tang Xiao shook his head. No. Impossible. It is impossible for the Semiras to surrender. Absolutely impossible. Thunbark Tula repeated loudly. Listen to me. Tang Xiao suddenly shouted. The powerful force of his voice even caused Thunbark Tula, who was countless light years away, to feel a terrible tremor, and she finally calmed down a little. Tang Xiao continued. Just hand over the design of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier and delete the data of the Forerunner's hyperspace jump engine. Then, Darth Vader will let you live. As for the Galactic Empire, we are not at war with them yet. We need to continue to build our strength. But I have not forgotten, Governor. Whether in the Confederation of Independent Systems, the Principality of Dawn, or the Masonic Alliance, what I say can also represent all Semiras people. We will never surrender to power. The Semiras people will always fight for freedom. Thunbark Tula declared. We will not forget our oath. And we will never. Tang Xiao suddenly shouted. Then remember your oath. Bury this humiliation deep in your heart. Go and bow down to Darth Vader and Palpatine in exchange for your chance to live. The war is not over yet. I am still standing here. As long as the Dawn planet stands, the Galactic Empire can never claim final victory. He took a deep breath, slowed down, and continued. When I launch a counterattack against the Galactic Empire, I hope that you, the Semiras, can still stand by my side and fight alongside me. Tears streamed down Thunbark Tula's face. But I see no hope. Even the powerful confederacy of independent systems cannot withstand the attack of the Galactic Empire. What else can we do? We cannot give up on our beliefs. The failure of the Confederation of Independent Systems was expected. The real trouble for the Galactic Empire has not yet come, so all we have to do is hibernate and wait. I will never give up the oath we once made. This is my promise, Tang Xiao said solemnly. Thunbark Tula nodded, but then shook her head and said, I will arrange the surrender of the planet Semiras, but I must give an explanation to the Semiras people and... Tang Xiao frowned. Don't do anything reckless. When we counterattack later, only you can lead the Semiras people to fight and deal a fatal blow to the Galaxy Empire. But Thunbark Tula remained extremely calm. She spoke, slowly. To the Semiras people, I am just an insignificant existence. On our planet, there are many heroes who stand up to the heavens and earth with powerful force. Determined fighters, wise strategists. The planet Semels can surrender, but the fire of resistance in people's hearts should not be extinguished. Let me preserve this fire. She bowed deeply to Tang Xiao and said, Then, this is farewell, Mr. Governor. Thank you for your support and help to the Semiras people. In the future, I hope the Semiras people can continue to work with the Fourth Civilization. Let's fight side by side with you. Tang Xiao was silent. He couldn't help but sigh deeply as he looked at this congresswoman who was usually very extravagant and lustful, even having several pretty boys, and indulging in corruption and bribery. Thunbark Tula's luxury and corruption had no impact on the powerful industrial world of planet Semels. This only showed her lack of personal ethics. However, in terms of national justice and persistence of beliefs, Thunbark Tula had never wavered. This is why she formed an alliance with Tang Xiao's Fourth Civilization from the very beginning, plotting together for the great cause of freedom and overthrowing the Galactic Republic. At least she was always fighting until death for her ideal galaxy. Within just a few dozen minutes, Tang Xiao connected to 2 communications and heard 2 farewells. When the holographic projection of Thunbark Tula dispersed, Tang Xiao remained sitting in the dark conference room for a long time, lost in thought. When the planet Salukami fell, the doomsday bells of the Confederation of Independent Systems had already begun to ring. From this moment on, It was no longer possible for the Federation of Independent Systems to build a new line of defense. All that was left was for the major planets to fight on their own. In fact, even in the original plot, Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker immediately returned to Coruscant to report on his work after conquering the planet Salukami. The war was already won at that moment. In this desperate battle with a disparity in power, many planetary governors and congressmen perished with the destruction of the main fleet of the Confederation of Independent Systems. Thunbark Tula, a member of the planet Semels, was one of the many who died. She led the squadron of the planet Semels, set up a formation in the near geosynchronous orbit of the planet Salukami, and fought the extremely powerful fleet of the Galactic Empire to the last man. The flagship she was on, the Behemoth-class battlecruiser, was besieged by more than a dozen Imperial-class star destroyers. Even though the bridge was destroyed and the power was paralyzed, the Semira's soldiers stationed in the turrets manually controlled the turrets and kept firing until the battleship was completely blown to pieces by countless turbolaser cannons. Count Dooku chose to gather his last strength on the planet Laxus, preparing for the final resistance there. After General Grievous escaped, he did not return to the planet Laxus. Instead, he flew his exclusive soulless fighter jet towards Hutt space. After the fall of Salukami, the Confederacy of Independent Systems collapsed almost immediately. The Technology Alliance was already on both ends of the spectrum. It was only because it was worried that its investment in the Confederation of Independent Systems would be completely wasted that it continued to work with Count Dooku. Now that it saw there was no possibility of victory, Foreman Wat Tambor immediately jumped ship, announcing his separation from the Confederation of Independent Systems and surrendering to the Galactic Empire. The planet Semels also followed suit, announcing its surrender. The surrender included handing over the data of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier. Among the planets that surrendered was Jabim. The planet's leader, Otto Stratus, had once led his people in a resolute fight against the Galactic Republic. His hatred was directed at the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Arter. Now that both were gone, he saw no reason to keep his people trapped in the flames of war. Before surrendering, he sent a message to Tang Xiao. Their conversation was brief, exchanging only a few words. To everyone's surprise, Darth Vader, who had gone on a killing spree on the planet Salukami, did not punish the surrendered planets. He simply accepted their surrender and instructed them to wait and see. This was incomprehensible to many. Was the Darth Vader who forgave these planets the same Darth Vader who had ordered the massacre of over 1 billion people on Salukami? No one knew that when Darth Vader looked at the Semels messenger, the eyes under his mask moved slightly. Chapter 1858, The Galactic Empire, Full of Buffs, Part 1. With the fall of the planet Salukami, the Confederacy of Independent Systems finally came to an end. The once powerful core members of the Confederacy went their separate ways. The corporate alliance had long been crippled by the war, suffering heavy losses in many battles. Whether it was the raid on the planet Camino or the attack on the planet Christophsis, their apparent victories masked significant losses. Moreover, during the Galactic Republic's counterattacks, several of the corporate alliance's industrial worlds in the inner and central star sectors were lost, leaving them devastated. To make matters worse, as the defense line of Salukami was breached, the headquarters of the corporate alliance and the home planet of the Kariva people, Molkana, were exposed and within striking range of the Galactic Empire. Unlike planet Semirs, the Technology Alliance and planet Jabim, which were the first to surrender, the Technology Alliance and planet Semirs had enough bargaining chips. Planet Jabim, once ravaged by a cerebral plague and civil war, had grown much stronger. Rich in precious minerals, Jabim made huge profits by exporting these resources. Early in the war, they established a good relationship with Tang Xiao and the Fourth Civilization, receiving significant investment from the Fourth Group. Consequently, the expanded Yunyu Commando on Jabim became a renowned presence in the Federation of Independent Systems. The Galactic Empire was reluctant to engage with Jabim, making their surrender the best outcome. However, the corporate alliance was in a different position. Already very weak, surrendering would result in their dismemberment and consumption by the new super-industrial trusts emerging in the Galactic Empire. It was almost certain that nothing would be left of them. Parcel Argent, the co-chairman of the corporate alliance, had no choice but to seek help from Tang Xiao. However, with the corporate alliance weakened, Tang Xiao showed no interest in connecting with him, merely advising him to escape to the planet Christophsis through Hutt space. With no other options, Parcel Argent moved the corporate alliance's remaining assets and prepared to surrender Mulcana, abandoning his people to make a comeback on Christophsis. Meanwhile, the Trade Federation and the Interstellar Banking Association were less affected. Newt Gunray and Thornhill had long decided to follow Tang Xiao, becoming core members in both the Principality of Dawn and the Freemasonry Alliance. The Interstellar Banking Association had already split with their new home on the planet Makito, rendering them unaffected by the events on Salukami. The Trade Alliance, despite suffering greater losses, had begun relocating to the Principality of Dawn in the later stages of the war. Their headquarters on Balmora Nemoidia and the core wealth planet Cato Nemoidia, isolated in the galaxy's core circle, were safeguarded by several secret passages established by the Trade Alliance, ensuring their continued control over these planets. In addition, several other members of the Confederation of Independent Systems, such as the Retail Alliance on the planet Christophsis, are also now in a state of uncertainty. The Confederation of Independent Systems can be said to be truly finished. However, despite this, many planets have decided to resist until the end. Most of these planets are not as powerful as the supercorporations, but they joined the Confederation of Independent Systems out of genuine belief in their cause, free faith. These planets are doing their best to organize their limited forces and prepare for a decisive battle with the Galactic Empire. As for the Galactic Empire, although it captured the planet Salukami and received the surrender of numerous planets and supercorporations, Darth Vader did not immediately advance past Salukami to penetrate the heart of the Confederation of Independent Systems. The reason is quite simple. Darth Vader himself is in an unstable state. Don't thin. That in the decisive battle on Salukami, Darth Vader simply crushed the opposition with overwhelming numbers and won by sheer force. In fact, during the 3 years before the Galactic Empire was established and Darth Vader launched this attack, the Empire had no intention of gathering a large fleet to take down Salukami in one fell swoop. They wanted to, but they couldn't. Darth Vader's ability to assemble the fleet, bring it safely to the Salukami system, launch an offensive that lasted 10 days, and maintain the integrity of the fleet's logistics and organization during this period is already a remarkable achievement. The difficulty of defeating Salukami can be understood by looking at the flat star map of the Milky Way. This planet is located close to the outermost cantilever of the Milky Way, almost at the edge. The main fleet of the Galactic Empire needs to make more than 10 jumps to arrive from the core circle of the Milky Way, and many of the transfer points along the way are not under the Empire's control. The surrounding situation is very complicated because the other direction of Salukami is right next to Hutt space. Unlike the original plot, where the Galactic Empire directly relied on its powerful strength to oppress the Hutts into surrendering, the current Galactic Empire still faces many foreign enemies. Therefore, they adopt a more cautious approach towards the Hutts, avoiding unnecessary provocation. In the ongoing civil war between the two Hutt families, the Galactic Empire adheres to the policies of the Galactic Republic and secretly supports the Desaligic family. Thus, deploying troops on a large scale on Salukami presents significant logistical challenges. Almost everywhere along the route, there are planets where uprisings have broken out, or interstellar pirates have set up hyperspace blockers, hoping to profit from the Imperial transport fleet. Chapter 859, The Galactic Empire Full of Buffs, Part 2. In the past, whether it was the Galactic Republic or the Galactic Empire, any attempt to launch an attack on the planet Salukami ended in disaster. Their fleets would either have their troop transports ambushed, turning soldiers into space debris, or their supply ships destroyed, leading to critical shortages of energy and missiles during intense battles. Count Dooku often hired fearless mercenary groups who would strike from behind, targeting the engines of Galactic Empire warships with relentless firepower. More advanced tactics included creating artificial hyperspace turbulence or setting up hyperspace blockers. While these couldn't completely sever hyperspace channels, they could cause significant deviations in the arrival times and coordinates of fleet warships. Such discrepancies often led to the fleet being picked off one by one, unable to concentrate their forces quickly. In some cases, errors in coordinates could result in ships crashing into planets, causing catastrophic losses. The hyperspace channels leading to Saleucami were not major routes, forcing fleets to divide their forces to navigate them. Compounding the difficulty was the threat from the Mandalorian sector, where Severance Tan, a separatist supergeneral, was stationed. Despite having a relatively small fleet, she commanded an Infinity-class super aircraft carrier and a Conqueror-class battleship. Her fleet was elusive, often striking where the Galactic Empire least expected, delivering fatal blows like a venomous snake. The Mandalorian sector had descended into chaos, a situation the Galactic Empire preferred to avoid. However, for Severance Tan, chaos was an opportunity. She could find clarity in the disorder and launch precise, lightning-fast attacks. Understanding this context highlights the significance of Darth Vader's achievement in bringing a super fleet of over 700 capital ships and more than 3,000 small and medium-sized battleships to Saleucami and launching a decisive offensive. This feat alone established Darth Vader as a general of the Galactic Empire on par with Severance Tan. The Empire proudly advertised this victory. After capturing Saleucami, Darth Vader paused. He executed all the planet's residents and broadcasted it live across the holographic network of the entire Federation of Independent Systems. This break allowed him to reorganize his fleet and restore the combat effectiveness of his warships. His ultimate goal was not just Saleucami, but the complete destruction of the Confederacy of Independent Systems in a single, decisive battle. Chapter 1860, The Galactic Empire, Full of Buffs, Part 2. The news of Darth Vader's conquest of Saleucami reached the heart of the Empire, Coruscant, providing a much-needed morale boost. The Empire's propaganda agencies celebrated this epic victory, repeatedly broadcasting battle footage, including scenes of Darth Vader's brutal massacre of Saleucami's residents. The Galactic Empire desperately needed this victory to bolster its image. Under the relentless propaganda from major media outlets, the residents of the Empire cheered for this victory. This magnificent and bloody triumph stirred the hearts of every citizen of the Galactic Empire, reigniting their once-numb spirits. With the precedent of the massacre on the planet Saleucami, everyone overlooked Darth Vader's seemingly peaceful and friendly acceptance of the first batch of surrenders, such as those from the planet Semels and the Technical Alliance. Upon closer inspection, given Darth Vader's demonstrated cruelty and bloodthirstiness, it is hard to believe he would genuinely treat his prisoners kindly. These anomalies were overshadowed by the bloody massacre on Saleucami, and no one noticed them, not even Emperor Palpatine. He believed that this was merely Darth Vader's method of stabilizing the situation. On the contrary, Palpatine admired Vader even more for his ability to kill when necessary, release when needed, and be flexible in his methods. This victory on Saleucami concealed many of the current problems of the Galactic Empire. In reality, Palpatine's life was not easy. A set of data can intuitively show the plight of the Galactic Empire and Palpatine. From the beginning of 16 BBY to July 4th, the end of the Battle of Saleucami, there were 170,000 recorded uprisings within the Empire in just 7 months. Most of these uprisings were concentrated in the central and outer star regions. Relatively speaking, the core circle was slightly more stable, though even the inner star region experienced some instability. Most planets in the Empire lived in fear. After the establishment of the Galactic Empire, Palpatine adopted high-pressure measures to quickly consolidate his rule. He discarded the last vestiges of democracy that the Galactic Republic once upheld and implemented a policy of blatant exploitation towards the planets in the central and outer rim sectors. On these planets, as long as there was any value, the Imperial fleet would arrive immediately. They would then establish a governor's palace, appoint a governor, and begin plundering all valuable resources and items on the planet. During this process, the residents of the planet were forcibly hired by the Imperial Governor-General at very low wages. These forcibly hired individuals were, in essence, slaves. They worked in high-intensity environments with only the most basic food and shelter. The Imperial stormtroopers did not care about their lives and would replace each worker as they were exhausted. There would even be plans on the governor's desk to dispatch labor from other planets when there was a shortage. This meant that even if all the people on a planet died, the Empire would not care. All they cared about were resources and wealth. All planets under the rule of the Galactic Empire were subjected to extremely high tax rates. If the taxes paid by any planet were insufficient, the Imperial fleet would arrive immediately. If taxes and fees were not enough, the Imperial tax collectors would take away all valuable items. In this process, no one cared whether the items taken were genuinely for tax deductions. Chapter 1860, The Galactic Empire Full of Buffs, Part 2. Compared to the Galactic Republic at its peak, the Galactic Empire controlled about one-third less territory. However, these areas were originally the fringe regions of the Galactic Republic, and their loss was not considered significant. Overall, the power of the Galactic Empire was indeed stronger than that of the Galactic Republic. But this so-called strength was not due to Palpatine's diligent governance, nor because the system of the Galactic Empire was more advanced. It was simply because the exploitation under the Galactic Empire had become more severe. Under Palpatine's rule, the Galactic Empire adopted extremist, totalitarian, and even terrorist methods to exploit and collect all the wealth and resources in the areas under its control. With the support of the Empire's extremely powerful fleet, his plundering extended even to the inner ring planets that once supported him. Palpatine was indeed very cunning in this regard. He gradually dismantled the power of the inner and core planets step by step. When he first became the Speaker of the Galactic Republic, his power was still very weak. Compared to the wealthy families in the inner and core circles, who had immense wealth and resources, he was like an ant that could be crushed at any time. However, he was cautious during his first term, walking on thin ice, and won the favor of most people. Secretly, he accumulated strength, attracted supporters, and collected evidence and dirt on his political opponents. During his second term, he struck hard and defeated most of his political opponents in one fell swoop. From then on, he thrived in the political arena of the Galactic Republic. Next, he triggered a separatist crisis, letting the clouds of war fill the galaxy, making everyone feel in danger. The nobles and wealthy families, with their vast amounts of wealth, were even more afraid of war. In this way, Palpatine could get the nobles and wealthy families to support him, because he had already passed the crisis on the planet Naboo and built himself into a brave, iron-blooded leader who was not afraid of powerful enemies. Wealth had to continue to support him because they believed that only Palpatine could defeat the separatists and preserve their status and wealth. But for Palpatine, it was all planned. As the war approached, Palpatine began to continuously promote the Military Creation Act. At this time, he still lacked political power, and the Military Creation Act failed to pass after several votes. However, Count Dooku and he cooperated internally and externally, further worsening the situation, and even signed a secession treaty on the planet Geonosis, preparing to establish the Confederation of Independent Systems. As a result, Padme Amidala and the Jedi Order were concerned and confused. When investigating the separatism, they discovered that Count Dooku was about to trigger a war, and this was also planned by Palpatine. After seeing the countless robot phalanxes on the planet Geonosis and the majestic separatist fleet surrounding the planet, the Council finally surrendered. Their surrender did not mean agreeing to the Military Creation Act, because it meant handing over military power to Palpatine. The people in the Parliament were not foolish. They understood that whoever held the military power was the boss. But Palpatine took advantage of Jar Jar Binks' kindness and did not touch the Military Creation Act. Instead, he obtained emergency ruling power for himself. Through this emergency ruling authority, Palpatine was given the power to issue direct executive orders during a separatist crisis without going through Congress, as long as he could prove that the decision was made to solve the separatist crisis. And because Jar Jar Binks was against Padme Amidala, and Padme was seriously injured in bed because of the crisis, Palpatine's plan moved forward without significant opposition. She was attacked by Jango Fett, and the spaceship was shot down. Consequently, Jar Jar Binks' speech was interpreted by others in the Parliament as a signal that the opposition, led by Padme, also supported Palpatine's emergency ruling powers. As a result, Palpatine, who received emergency ruling power, used this authority to forcefully pass the Military Creation Act, establish the Grand Army of the Republic, and firmly grasp military power. This series of strategic moves left the members of the Republic's parliament bewildered and defeated. They could only watch as Palpatine gradually took control of the Republic. During the Clone Wars that followed, Palpatine continued to exploit the crisis to strengthen his power. Although the nobles and wealthy families clung to their wealth, the finances of the Galactic Republic were on the verge of collapse. They believed that this approach would prevent Palpatine from gaining greater power, but in reality, it only intensified the class contradictions within the Republic, which was exactly what Palpatine desired. The core and inner circles gradually lost the support of the middle and outer circles. The Jedi Order also became increasingly entangled in the war, shifting from their role as guardians of the galaxy to becoming accomplices in the Galactic Republic's civil war. At this point, the wealthy families in the inner and core circles had no choice but to continue supporting Palpatine. Despite their immense wealth and high status, they had no alternative. Palpatine then capitalized on the disastrous defeat in the Ariadu system and the betrayal of the Rendili planet during the war to issue a bill that canceled and confiscated the planetary defense fleets of all planets. This bill left all planets, except those Palpatine considered loyal, defenseless. They couldn't resist, as doing so would label them as separatists and traitors. The increasingly powerful fleet of the Galactic Republic would naturally enforce this. Subsequently, the Jedi Order was branded as traitors and completely eradicated. When the nobles and wealthy families in the inner and core circles looked back, they found themselves isolated and powerless. Once, their power far exceeded that of Palpatine, and they had countless opportunities to overthrow him. In the end, it was they who were put on the chopping block. During the Galactic Republic, it was Palpatine's time to prepare. After the establishment of the Galactic Empire, it was his time to feast. The entire galaxy, including the once aloof aristocratic and wealthy families, became his meal. The Galactic Empire was indeed stronger than the Galactic Republic. This strength did not come from the total power, but from the concentrated power in the hands of the ruling government. Chapter 1861, Tang Xiao's Crowbar. In Palpatine's Galactic Empire, class divisions became even more severe. The wealthy families in the inner and core circles began to see huge cracks. For example, the Tag family of Cassio Tag could command a private fleet of 5,000 small and medium-sized warships. However, many other former noble families were dismissed simply because Palpatine considered them unreliable. They were stripped of everything. This deprivation was not a one-time event, but a gradual process, like a knife cutting bit by bit. In the end, these families could only hand over their wealth and resources to Palpatine as protection fees, becoming the pockets of the Sith Lord and Imperial Emperor. Only through such naked plunder and exploitation could the Galactic Empire expand its fleet on a large scale. During the Galactic Republic, building a warship required a lengthy process. It needed to be reviewed and approved by the Ship Supervision Committee, then submitted to the Galactic Parliament. After the Parliament met and approved, procurement was carried out, the cost was reported to financial review, and then funds were allocated for construction. This process was rife with exploitation and deception, leading to the Republic's finances becoming increasingly overwhelmed and military expenditures rising. As a result, only a limited number of warships could be built. In contrast, the Galactic Empire operated differently. Palpatine issued direct orders, and all 100 battleships were put on the production line. Raw materials were looted at little cost, workers were slaves who were barely fed, and industrial giants were all under Palpatine's control. This allowed the Galactic Empire to expand its army unscrupulously. After expanding its army, it further oppressed exploited planets, collecting wealth in a predatory manner. Under such circumstances, all officials, generals, nobles, and companies favored by Palpatine enjoyed privileges. These privileges made them more unscrupulous in their extortion, bringing terror to every planet controlled by the Galactic Empire. Therefore, the entire Galactic Empire was rife with corruption, far more serious than during the Galactic Republic. However, while the Galactic Republic's corruption involved the entire inner circle, core circle, high-level officials, and parliament, the Galactic Empire's corruption was confined to a small, privileged class. This made the situation even darker. In the final analysis, the Galactic Empire was indeed expanding its military power at a speed unimaginable during the Galactic Republic, but this process came at a heavy price for countless planets. The Empire could only continue to expand its army because stopping would lead to its own demise. This was a vicious cycle of militarism with no future or hope. The Galactic Empire, like a mustachioed dictator, had opened the devil's box and could not stop. Even if Palpatine wanted to stop, the privileged class would push him to continue moving towards the abyss. From Palpatine's perspective, he didn't care at all. He was indifferent to the life and death of the galaxy's people. He only cared about when he could become a Sith and rule the galaxy. The Galactic Empire had no future? It didn't matter to him. He would just expand the army crazily and wipe out all enemies. As for what would happen to the Galactic Empire in the future, whether it would die of poverty or starvation, he didn't care. In fact, Palpatine himself was the biggest embezzler in the Galactic Empire. Not only did he obtain immense wealth through corruption and bribery, but he also used the Empire's official power to facilitate his own dark side research. This involved countless human experiments, modifications, mutations, and dark side erosion, all contributing to Darth Sidious's strength. Darth Sidious's power was growing stronger and stronger, expanding to unprecedented levels. In their previous confrontation on the planet Korriban, he had only been slightly better than Darth Malthael and had ultimately been outmaneuvered by Lethal's death force. However, now the gap between them had widened significantly. The difference lay in their approaches. Darth Sidious was willing to sacrifice everything for power, while Darth Malthael focused on a solid, methodical process. Darth Malthael's foresight into the impending wave of liberalism and the power of the Rebel Alliance allowed him to remain calm under the pressure from Darth Sidious and the Galactic Empire. As Count Dooku had noted, Tang Xiao himself did not believe he was superior to Palpatine, who was the most powerful villain, conspirator, and politician in the entire Star Wars saga. Before his time travel, Tang Xiao had been an ordinary person. Even with his newfound death force, he couldn't compare to Palpatine's existence. However, Tang Xiao had an advantage. He could foresee the future direction of the universe. This foresight was crucial, even more so than the database in the Mothership. It was the lever Tang Xiao could use to move the mountain that was Palpatine. With this knowledge, Tang Xiao had planned to become Darth Plagueis' apprentice from the very beginning, inheriting his legacy. He then continued to learn and grow under Darth Tenebris. Without the careful teachings of these two Sith Lords, Tang Xiao would never have become the Archangel capable of competing with Palpatine. Without such growth, even if he were given immense power and a powerful fleet, as an ordinary college student, he would have been defeated quickly. Throughout this process, there were no cheats from the Mothership, only Tang Xiao's own efforts, struggles, and foresight. Tang Xiao knew that what could defeat the Galactic Empire was not an invincible fleet or advanced technology, but the angry populace rising against Palpatine's and the Empire's tyranny. After making a separate peace with Palpatine, he did not rush to expand his military strength or build powerful battleships from the Mothership database. Instead, he focused on consolidating the planet Rendili, expanding his strength, stabilizing his rear, and preventing the Dawn Principality from falling apart in the coming storm of uprisings. The Mothership database contained countless powerful battleships, but manufacturing them required costs, factories, and overcoming various technological challenges. Forming a fleet of powerful battleships without a solid foundation would lead to logistical collapse. Therefore, instead of blindly pursuing the power of individual battleships, Tang Xiao prioritized establishing a robust system. Whether it was an economic, industrial, social, military, or fleet system, only by doing so could he remain standing in a galaxy increasingly descending into chaos. While the Galactic Empire celebrated their victory on the planet Salukami and boasted about their industrial advantages and fleet-building capabilities, they were unaware that Darth Malthael was consolidating his internal affairs. He watched with indifference, quietly counting the remaining days. Of the Galactic Empire. That's right, 170,000 uprisings broke out in just 7 months. Palpatine believed that the victory on the planet Salukami and the secret construction of the DS-1 battle fortress, in a location even Tang Xiao was unaware of, would instill terror and allow him to regain control of the situation. But Tang Xiao would tell him that he was wrong. What Palpatine was facing now was just the beginning. Chapter 1862 to 1863, Death Star Plan, Part 1. Your Majesty the Governor, General Severance Tan's envoy has arrived, an assistant informed Tang Xiao respectfully. An envoy? Tang Xiao paused his work, frowning. In this era of highly developed hyperspace communications, sending emissaries was rare. Hyperspace communication combined with quantum entanglement technology allowed for almost real-time communication across more than half of the galaxy. Sending an emissary, even with mature hyperspace navigation technology, involved a tortuous and dangerous journey, especially from the Mandalorian sector, where Severance Tan was stationed to Dawn Planet. However, some top-secret information still required personal delivery. For instance, in Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, Count Dooku personally traveled to Coruscant to deliver the Death Star data and information about the official outbreak of the war to Darth Sidious. Hyperspace communications could be intercepted by hyperspace outposts scattered throughout the galaxy, risking intelligence leaks. Although the actual interception probability was low, the risk was unacceptable for crucial information. After receiving Tang Xiao's permission, Severance Tan led her fleet to the Mandalorian sector, operating almost independently. She had near-complete decision-making power in that region, which was diagonally across the galaxy from Dawn Planet and beyond its immediate reach. Consequently, events there had minimal direct impact on Dawn Planet. Severance Tan typically reported via direct messages, such as when she informed Tang Xiao about the impending fall of Salukami Planet due to the Galactic Empire fleet's large-scale mobilization and strategic deployment. She also chose not to participate in that battle, believing she couldn't alter its outcome and preferring to conserve her strength. Now, Severance Tan had sent a secret envoy. What could be more critical than the decisive battle on Salukami Planet? Tang Xiao nodded and instructed his assistant, "Ask the emissary to come to my meditation room." He then walked towards the hidden elevator behind his office. A moment later, a robot entered. It was a modified ceremonial robot with a blood-red kyber crystal on its chest, surrounded by complex and mysterious patterns, a product of Sith alchemy. "Tell me the information you brought," Tang Xiao commanded. "Please confirm your identity," the robot's rigid electronic voice responded. Tang Xiao raised his hand, placing it on the red kyber crystal, and injected a force of death into it. This device, crafted by Darth Lilium, could only be unlocked by Tang Xiao's force of death. Any mistake would trigger the force stored in the kyber crystal by Darth Lilium to explode, destroying the robot's storage system. After confirmation, the robot's eyes projected a holographic display of text, video, and data intelligence, accompanied by Severance Tan's voice. "My master, during recent operations, I discovered some unusual information. First, during the decisive battle on Salukami Planet, Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress did not appear. Although they had been stationed there to assist General Grievous, they are now missing. What is certain is that they—" Tang Xiao's face grew serious as he read the report. The distance between the planet Dathomir and the Mandalorian sector was not far. As the home of the Night Sisters, Tang Xiao had instructed Severance Tan to keep an eye on the situation there before she set off for the Mandalorian sector. Now, something had happened on Dathomir, and it had escaped their surveillance. In addition, my reconnaissance plane is no longer able to approach the planet Dathomir. An unknown situation has occurred there, causing all exploration to fail. I suspect something dangerous is happening on the planet Dathomir. Considering both Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress are from there, I think there is a connection, Severance Tan reported. Tang Xiao's concern deepened. The Galactic Empire's spies and reconnaissance aircraft had been spotted more frequently in recent times. I don't think the Mandalorian sector currently has such strategic importance, so this is probably aimed at me. If they dare to interfere in the Mandalorian sector, they will never come back. Severance Tan's voice was resolute. She continued, the above are some recent abnormal situations, and what follows is a very serious piece of information that I accidentally discovered. The Technology Alliance, in fact, at the beginning of the establishment of the Galactic Empire, had completely betrayed the Confederation of Independent Systems and became our enemy. Also betraying us was the Archduke of Geonosis, Poggle the Lesser. Tang Xiao's heart skipped a beat. He had believed that after the establishment of the Galactic Empire, Count Dooku had renegotiated agreements with several core members of the Confederation of Independent Systems, consolidating their loyalty by transferring significant benefits. At that time, the Galactic Empire was newly established and in turmoil. Leaders like Newt Gunray, Wat Tambor, and Pascal Argente saw it as an opportunity to consolidate their territories and gradually counterattack to regain lost planets. Although the Dawn Planet and the Galactic Empire had made a separate peace, the Dawn Planet had also annihilated the last main fleet of the Galactic Republic in 2 battles, which did not shake the confidence of the Confederation's leaders. The Corporate Alliance, Technology Alliance, Retail Industry Association, and Geonosian Planet were in high morale, even launching counterattacks and reclaiming some planets. Tang Xiao had learned about this through Count Dooku himself. After Dooku severed ties with Darth Sidious, his internal control and integration of the Confederation of Independent Systems were much stronger than in the original plot. The information from Dooku had seemed reliable. But now, Severance Tan was telling him that the Technology Alliance and the planet Geonosis had completely betrayed them at that time. What was going on? Tang Xiao needed to get to the bottom of this. The stakes were too high, and the implications of such betrayal could change everything. Chapter 1863 to 1864, Death Star Plan, Part 2. Upon hearing the news, Tang Xiao's face turned extremely grim. He muttered to himself, the home planet of the Technology Alliance is far away in the core circle, on the planet Skako. I can't do anything about it for now, so I'll let it be. But Bogle, you low-class man, who gave you the courage to betray me. Tomorrow, I will raise the planet Geonosis to the ground. At that moment, Severance Tan continued to relay information through the holographic projection. According to my investigation, the Queen of the Geonosians, Karina the Great, is not currently on Geonosis. This revelation made Tang Xiao frown deeply, as it brought to mind several unpleasant memories. Severance Tan then shared her insights and opinions on the intelligence, reminding Tang Xiao that although the Galactic Empire had instigated the rebellion against the Technology Alliance and Geonosis early on, they had not even utilized them in the Battle of Salukami. This indicated that, in the eyes of the Galactic Empire, the significance of their betrayal was greater than the strategic value of Salukami. The outcome of the battle for Salukami was crucial in the prolonged conflict between the Galactic Empire and the Confederation of Independent Systems. Capturing Salukami would be tantamount to defeating the Confederation. In other words, from the Galactic Empire's perspective, the Technology Alliance and Geonosis were even more critical than the Confederation itself. After the intelligence was presented, the Kyber crystal on the robot's chest emitted a bloody light, followed by a burst of dark energy. Sparks erupted from the robot's body, which then collapsed with a loud crash, turning into a pile of half-melted scrap metal. Tang Xiao fell into deep contemplation over the information provided by Severance Tan. After a long period of thought, he contacted the current Minister of Military Intelligence, Saratan Moss. Saratan Moss was a Solarian with dark green skin and congenital vertical stripes on his face, making him an outlier even among his own kind. His appearance gave him a fierce look. The former Minister of Military Intelligence was Mrs. M, but Tang Xiao had grown increasingly dissatisfied with her work since the latter half of the Clone Wars. Consequently, After reforming the Intelligence Department, redistributing power, and strengthening the National Security Bureau and the Secret Intelligence Department, Tang Xiao replaced Mrs. M in the next round of reforms. Mrs. M was getting too old, and her abilities could no longer keep pace with the reformed Imperial Intelligence Agency of the Galactic Empire, making her resignation inevitable. Saratan Moss, a native Solarian, was an ace spy, codenamed 01 in the former Military Intelligence Department. He had demonstrated strong personal and organizational abilities in numerous missions. Within the Military Intelligence Department, he represented the new generation, succeeding the aging Mrs. M and James Bond. The Solarians, naturally suited for intelligence work, had begun to appear in large numbers and occupy important positions in the major intelligence agencies of the Principality of Dawn. Only human ghost agents could compete with them in the intelligence field. Mrs. M was a very composed individual. Before her departure, she promoted Saratan Moss to Deputy Minister of Military Intelligence. When informed by Tang Xiao of her impending replacement, she accepted it gracefully and cooperated fully with Saratan Moss to ensure a smooth transfer of duties and power. After taking over the Military Intelligence Department, Saratan Moss exhibited a completely different style. Saratan Moss was more efficient, accurate, and even ruthless compared to Mrs. M. Despite Mrs. M's elegant demeanor as a veteran spy, she couldn't match his effectiveness. When the communication connected, Saratan Moss gave Tang Xiao a military salute and asked in a deep voice, "Do you have any orders, Your Excellency the Grand Duke?" His speech was slow and steady, with clear enunciation, which was impressive for a Solarian. Given that Solarians have a metabolic rate twice that of humans, they typically move and speak quickly. However, Saratan Moss had undergone rigorous training, allowing him to control his speaking speed, showcasing his professionalism. Tang Xiao asked directly, "What's the progress on the Galactic Empire's DS-1 battle space station plan?" "We are closely monitoring the planet Geonosis and have confirmed that the Galactic Empire cannot make any moves there." Archduke Bogle. The Inferior has also organized a powerful army on the planet. However, analyzing the output of the robot factories on Geonosis, it appears they have adjusted their production capacity allocation, Saratan Moss reported. Generally speaking, if the Galactic Empire wants to choose the construction site for the DS-1 battle space station, Geonosis is not a viable option. He paused before continuing. Given the need to build a massive spherical combat space station with a diameter of over 120 kilometers, we have checked more than 1,400 planets and conducted analyses. We have not yet found a specific site. However, it is certain that the Galactic Empire has completed its research and development phase and has begun its construction plan. This is the report. Tang Xiao nodded and reviewed the report submitted by Saratan Moss. According to the report, approximately 1,700 companies within the Galactic Empire had been dissolved. Previous analyses indicated that most of these companies were established under various names to recruit experts and talents in different fields. They split the research and development work of the DS-1 combat space station into tens of thousands of projects, conducting scattered research efforts. The companies targeted by the Military Intelligence Department for providing R&D support for DS-1 had now been disbanded, and some key personnel were missing, indicating that the main R&D work was complete and a massive engineering team was ready to start construction. Despite the in-depth intelligence work, Saratan Moss found it challenging to pinpoint the specific location of DS-1. It was clear that it couldn't be built on Geonosis, as depicted in the original plot. Tang Xiao's reason for questioning Saratan Moss about this matter was his suspicion that the disappearance of the Technical Alliance and the Queen of Geonosis was closely related to the commencement of DS-1's construction. Chapter 1864-1865, Death Star Plan, Part 2. Tang Xiao took a deep breath and then asked, "Orson Krennic, have you found this person?" Saratan Moss answered directly. Orson Callan Krennic was born on the planet Lexrel 35 years ago, 51 BBY. He was once part of the Galactic Republic's Talent Reserve program, a member of the Galactic Republic's Future program. Later, he joined the Republic's Corps of Engineers and became a visiting professor at the Institute of Applied Sciences. At the beginning of the war, he was secretly recruited into the Republic's Strategic Advisory Group, but his public identity remained with the Republic Engineer Corps. However, after the war entered its second year, he disappeared, and all information about him was classified as highly confidential by the Galactic Republic. He didn't need to read any documents and immediately recited all the information about Krennic. This person is outgoing and cheerful, with a handsome appearance. During the Republic's future program, he was known for his promiscuity, often sleeping with a different woman every few days. It is said that he slept with every beautiful woman recruited by this program. Surprisingly, he graduated with honors, which shows that beneath his frivolous and romantic exterior, he possesses very rigorous and professional knowledge. Additionally, during the Republic's future program, he was very good friends with Galen Erso, another accomplished energetic scientist, despite their completely opposite personalities. Tang Xiao nodded and said, "Continue to search. If we can find Orson Krennic, then immediately send out ghost agents and assassinate him at all costs." In addition, the Queen of the Geonosians, Emperor Karina, is now missing, and she is not on the planet Geonosis. I think the Geonosians are still working on building the DS-1 combat space station. Wait a minute, you said that Emperor Karina is not on the planet Geonosis? Saraton Moss caught this point. If this is true, then it probably started several years ago, because according to our current control of the planet Geonosis, it is impossible for them to have any spacecraft leave without us knowing about it. He thought for a while and then said, "But the social system of the Geonosians does make it difficult for us to monitor them in detail. They usually live underground, are extremely exclusive, and have a huge population. Their reproductive methods are not known to outsiders at all. If you hadn't told me about the existence of Emperor Karina, Governor, and that the Geonosians were bred by the Queen alone, I wouldn't have known anything about it." Tang Xiao said, "Emperor Karina usually lives in the deepest holy place under the planet Geonosis. She never shows up and controls the working class of the Geonosians through her unique telepathy. It can be said that the Geonosians are a very peculiar race of semi-gestalt consciousness. Regarding the departure of Emperor Karina, I still don't know how Severance Tan learned this information, but I think the credibility of this information is very high. In other words, do you think Emperor Karina left the planet Geonosis just to breed a Geonosian engineering team in a new location and then build the DS-1 battle space station for the Galactic Empire?" Saraton Moss understood the key. "Yes, in my opinion, this is how this strange information connects to DS-1, Tang Xiao nodded. In the original plot, the DS-1 battle space station, also known as the Death Star, was proposed by Geonosian scientists. At that time, the Geonosians only had a rough concept of the entire design, including the super energy generator that could destroy a planet instantly. Geonosian scientists suggested using kyber crystals as a source of energy. Later, the leader of the lower caste of the Geonosians, Bogor the Lower Class, launched an uprising and overthrew the then Archduke of the Geonosians, becoming the ruler of the planet. Geonosis formed an alliance with Count Dooku, resulting in the planet receiving investments to further refine its DZ-NS. When the Clone Wars erupted, Bogle Inferior provided design data, which Count Dooku later transferred to Darth Sidious. However, the DS-1 design still faced issues with its energy generator. The real breakthrough came when Orson Krennic became the director of the Galactic Empire Weapons Research Institute. But Emperor Kalina is a sacred figure to the Geonosians. She resides in the Holy Land and cannot leave. For the Geonosians, her departure would signify the collapse of their faith. How did the Galactic Empire manage it? Saraton Moss wondered, perplexed. For Tang Xiao, understanding this was straightforward. By comparing the current events with the original plot and identifying the differences, he could pinpoint the catalyst, the destruction of the Business Guild. After receiving Tang Xiao's advice and uncovering Darth Sidious's conspiracy, Count Dooku became the head of the Confederation of Independent Systems and committed fully to the war. This was his only hope for survival. Unlike the original plot, he couldn't afford to be hasty. To strengthen his rule, he initiated reforms within the Confederation, supported by the Mutual Aid Alliance organized by Tang Xiao. These reforms led supercorporations to relinquish some privileges and power, thereby enhancing Count Dooku's administrative control over the Confederation. Essentially, the Federation of Independent Systems was reformed into a more centralized entity. Among the super-corporate giants, the Trade Alliance and the Interstellar Banking Association had already allied with Tang Xiao. Recognizing the dire situation, they willingly sacrificed some privileges for long-term survival. The Enterprise Alliance, weakened and connected to Tang Xiao and the Mutual Aid Alliance, couldn't oppose the reforms. The main opposition came from the business guilds and technology alliances. Walter Tambo, the chief foreman of the Technical Alliance, was cunning and confident in their core competencies, making them less vulnerable to Count Dooku's power consolidation. Thus, the final target was the business guilds, the weakest among the 5 major corporate giants, lacking core strength of their own.